Welcome to the final chapter of the Red Pearls of Borneo. We've completed the main story at the plantation. We've completed Lucas's, Loon's, and Rose's journey back to England. But there is still Cynthia's journey remaining, right? The last we saw of her, well, we saw two things from her. Last we saw of her in the plantation, she was in the guest house after the Navy has arrived and repelled the Japanese invasion onto the plantation. And then we get a short chapter during Lucas, Loon's, and Rose's journey where they meet Cynthia along the way in Colombo. So we know that she's made it out of here and she was sent on further missions. But I guess now it's time for us to uncover what happened in between. While we do have Cynthia's journey outlined here in our mind's eye as a separate area we can go into, I keep going back to the fact that we still have timeline unfilled on the plantation, and it's specifically telling us that the last thing we saw contains a clue where to go next. So I think we can complete this timeline, right? We can complete the 6 remaining slots here for Cynthia. We just have to figure out where she's gone in the rooms we still have open, which is also not too many of them, and who she's been with. That's usually the blocking factor. It's like, we need to be able to identify the other people, and we can't do that unless they have names and pictures. So last thing we know is that she's been told by the superior officer to clean up and meet at 10 a.m. sharp for a debriefing. And we also have the pearl, the one pearl that Cynthia was left with from the stack that she picked up in the library. And it is attached to her. She's the owner of it. So we might be able to figure out where she's gone using it in the remaining rooms. It doesn't say where this debriefing is supposed to take place. He only said at 10 a.m. So we just have to go around the rooms that are available and see if one of them is going to work. Okay, so I went through a bunch of the rooms at 10 a.m. and they've so far just given me nothing happened at this hour. Study at 10 a.m. is giving me reconstruction is incorrect. We're trying to snoop with the pearl, which means something did actually happen there. I just don't know who was there, but it wasn't Cynthia with the pearl. At the veranda, the pearl also doesn't give a correct reconstruction, but that means something happened in there too. And then nothing at the workers' quarters. Okay, well, I've tried, but I guess where the game wants us to go is to do the Cynthia's journey. Okay, so in this case, it seems like we're still remaining pretty much within Borneo, right? They just journey from the plantation into a city on the island. And first stop is Goodwill Plantation, but presumably that's different than the internal timeline. Out of the frying pan into the fire, so I assume they're also not completely out of trouble yet. So we have Cynthia and the Pearl, and in terms of time, we got December 17th, evening of December 17th, until December 23rd. So this is a lot shorter timeline than the other journey, and I guess it's only up to where they make it to the city, and then they depart, and she finds herself further out. Okay, so in the evening, interestingly, it gives us Ludwig Harrow as well. So let's try the Pearl then and see if there is more here than just her. Cynthia is the commander in the command post. We have a commander title and new location command post. In the Goodwill Plantation map, interesting. So it's still adding locations into our original area, and that's why I couldn't get things there, because I didn't have the locations. The soldier nods and Cynthia Civil enters and the hastily constructed command post in the Goodwill Plantation. We've done what we can here, sir. The fires are out and the dead are committed to the air. But we both know the Japanese are merely regrouping in the mangroves. They'll be back soon and they'll bring heavier metal next time. I understand, which is I must beg your indulgence. I need to strike for Sandakan immediately. I think that's the city that's on the map. My intent is there. I was due to reconvene with him after this job. I would very much like to take Miller and his men. Last name found, yeah. They have proven useful today and then seem to have the right background for this trek through the jungle. And their orders once we reach capital? I'm much obliged, Commander. Just one last thing. Who arrived earlier? I saw them arrive by steam engine when I was by the jungle entrance. I could have sworn I saw you go up and greet them as I was coming back down. I must have imagined it. As Cynthia Seville exits, a superior officer looks up. Yes, he was the one she was talking to by the veranda, right? Cynthia stops short, turns around and pulls a small photograph from her pocket. That's an item. She looks at it for a moment, then hands it over to a superior officer. It's John a few weeks ago. You keep it. Someone she knew? That's someone new, like I assume, who has connection to her, but unclear who exactly that is right now. Cynthia emerges from the wash house where she recuperated the pearl and her affairs. Okay, so she did pick it up eventually. Let's get a move on, gentlemen. I have an appointment in the city and I don't mean to keep it waiting. Cynthia is collecting some vines with parang. What's the watch bill, Sergeant? Okay, so we have Sergeant title. Are we gonna be, instead of constructing full names, we're gonna be like Sergeant something or Commander something? Cynthia interrupting. I'll take the midnight till 2. I can handle a rifle as well as any blue jacket. Don't let the skirts I was wearing earlier fool you. MI5. I try not to shout it from the rooftop. Secrecy and all that. But seeing how we're about to depend on each other to survive, I owe you the courtesy of the truth. He must have been something, yeah. It's obviously partial conversations. We don't know where other people are speaking in between or who they are. So just bits and pieces. So let's see. We've got a small photograph. A photo of Cynthia's intended, yes. Because she did speak about being engaged, but then it was like, is this just a cover for her story? But no, it seems like the person does indeed exist, and therefore she owns this photograph. Yes, it's linked to her, so we can also use it to listen in. So now we have two things. The pearl and the photo. She handed the photo to someone, or was she just showing it? And then she collects the pearl. New profile added, John Fairfax. Okay, that's the fiancé. So it's John. Oh, interesting. So it told us that he's John Fairfax, but it didn't add Fairfax to our name list, so we can't actually identify him. It's a bit weird. Okay, so that didn't give us any new location on this map, but it added things inside the plantation. Okay, it also updated the art. Now it's after it all happened. The clubhouse is of course destroyed. The area in front of the boathouse, I guess this is where Cynthia fired the rocket, so it blew up. The house has been partially burned. Some of the workers' quarters are destroyed. So yeah, and then of course the railway also destroyed in the fire. So things pretty bad. But now yes, the command post is next to the veranda, so that's probably where they are having this briefing at 10 a.m. The command post has been set up hastily with what remains of the veranda. So now we're back to the third timeline, but presumably nothing happens at the command post all the way until 10 a.m., right? Because it didn't exist. But now we could potentially use the photograph to see if Cynthia was here. Yes. Cynthia is out of the guest house, having grabbed some spare clothes she had left there when she first arrived at the plantation. Cynthia enters the command post. The dim light of the oil lamp casting long shadows across the room. The blue boys work mighty fast, I must say. Where is Fairfax? He told me 10 a.m. sharp. Okay, and that gives us the name we need for the final picture, because it said John Fairfax. So he's actually in the armed forces as well. She's expecting him to be here. Well, he's identified, so we should be able to track him on the timeline. Well, presumably she might remain in the command post talking to people. Yes, so at 11, Cynthia. Reginald! It's good to see you despite the circumstances. And you said 10, but no matter. Okay, so that's the superior officer who said it's gonna be at 10, the briefing. His name is Reginald. I apologize. Stiff upper lip and all that. Never been my strong suit. Superior officer takes the manifest from Cynthia's hands and puts it back on the desk. I had leads that the Rajas and the Triad were both putting the squeeze on the plantation managers. Being able to get a jump on both with one spiderweb was just too good to be passed on. The Japanese had other ideas. My dear mother and my to-be, of course. I do have a favor to ask of you. Superior officer just stares at Cynthia. Can I requisite some of your men to help me bury the poor souls with dignity in the cemetery by the chapel? This massacre was terribly unnecessary. These were good people and they fought hard to the very end. Every blasted last one of them. I had grown quite fond of this family in the few hours I did manage to spend with them. Cynthia runs up to the worker quarters as a superior officer approaches the soldier on guard at the entrance. Okay, so she's like, yeah, can we just bury them, please? It's been a lot. They've been through a lot in the hours preceding this meeting, so, you know, it's at least something, even though they were sort of backstabbing each other a little bit. So what's next? She's in the cemetery. Cemetery is overgrown and holds graves of Goodwill family members, many of them young men. So is she here then at 12? with her photograph. Nope, nothing happened here. Later, maybe? They took a detour? Okay, so something is happening here at 1, but my reconstruction is incorrect trying to sniff it with the photograph or with the pearl. Okay, so someone's there. It's just not Cynthia with her items. When she's at the command post, she doesn't have the pearl on her because the photographs gives readings, but the pearl does not, which means when she bathed and she took the pearl out, she left it at the workers' quarters. But we know she picks it up. We know she picks it up because the pearl eventually makes it out of here, because it makes its way all the way back to England. Does that mean she will eventually return to workers' quarters to pick it up? Okay, so once again, there is a slot at 12 here that gives reconstruction incorrect with the pearl, but it does give partial read with the photograph. Cynthia sends the slope towards the workers' quarters and the stench just hits her like a brick. It's only been a few hours, but the heat is already affecting the decomposition of the bodies. Wait, tell me, you do only have the Japanese soldiers and pirates for the pit, I trust. You're not committing any of the civilians that were murdered to this dog hole. A young servant? Could it be Aisia? I didn't see her during any of the commotion. Cynthia salutes the young man. As you were. Okay, so they're talking about, yes, the bodies of the people that lived here. She doesn't want them just thrown in the pit with like the soldiers. She even tries to make sure that Aisia just doesn't get thrown with like the Japanese soldiers in the pit. Even if Aisia did betray the plantation, right? She did conspire with others to help the pirates invade. That said, obviously with her it's different because she's a local and she is just a servant at the plantation, right? So she's basically exploited by the British colonies, right? It's not like she's living the good life here and she's betraying people who gave her everything, right? It's much different for her. For her, she thought maybe she can have freedom, right? She thought that she could be freed from this if she worked with someone else who could come in and remove the plantation owners. I can't exactly be like, oh yeah, she's evil, that she betrayed them. So what else can I gather from this, right? Because I don't think the plan is to just click the pearl and the photograph on every single location I can manage. The one on this conversation is still there because I didn't actually uncover the full event, right? I just got the partial echo. But that's just about the debriefing. Well, when she goes to the command post, she says, "Where is Fairfax? He told me 10 a.m. sharp," which means she's trying to meet John Fairfax, her fiancé, but also the superior officer then, right? Because that comes from this other conversation over here, where superior officer says, "You go clean up and meet me at 10 a.m. sharp for the briefing," right? And she pretends to ignore him but smiles and she continues walking. So that's why she's giving him attitude, because it's actually her fiancé. And so because when she comes in at the command post at 10, he's not there because she's like, "Where's Fairfax? He told me 10. And then he is in our guest list, but when I go do the timeline, he doesn't show up as an individual for me to pick. So I'm not quite sure what that's about, right? I thought if the people go on the guest list, then they're selectable, but he's here as the small photograph, but not here as a person. It's also a bit like, here we were able to discover this scene even though she's talking to an unnamed superior officer and we're not required to identify him. But later on, clearly it's expecting us to identify people, because if I just press Cynthia... no, if I just press Cynthia, it does open even though she is talking to someone. Okay, yeah, I think after this initial set of the game, it gets a little bit more confusing, because initially you're always required to identify everyone who's involved in the scene, but then in the journey and now here, even though this is using the original timeline, it feels like some people are just considered unimportant and we don't need to identify them and still able to uncover the whole scene. Cynthia is out of the guest house, having grabbed some spare clothes she had left there when she first arrived at the plantation. She feels refreshed, as if possible considering the circumstances after her bath. She can see the Navy has been hard at work up the lines. Temporary military camp would have been referred to as the lines. It would have consisted of huts made of local materials instead of tents. A mess hall, okay, that's another new location, has already been stood up and a makeshift soup is already on the fire. Cynthia enters the command post, the dim light of the oil lamp casting long shadows across the room. She looks around the room, taking in the makeshift command center. The blue boys work mighty fast, I must say. There's a desk with a map of the estate spread out before her, a radio on the shelf, a distinctive gold lighter, and a stack of papers spread out. Gold lighter, that might be the same item that we've seen during the original events, right? Jeremiah had it, then Ludwig took it, and then last we saw it, it was in Ludwig's jacket. So we know Ludwig made off out of the plantation, but he may have accidentally left it behind. Unless it's another one. She notices a manifest and flicks through it. There's a photo of key personnel. I can gather from the resonance, I feel, which ones will be important. I'll add them to the case file. Okay, so yes, now we're actually going into the whole... Yeah, only some people are important, so I need to identify them, but the rest of them... whatever. I can only feel them from 8 on the Wednesday morning. Their lunch would have been too far from the plantation before then, and I wouldn't know where the sea would have emerged from. It's also very clear they were all together on the shore at 8 and then spread out afterwards. Okay, so the officers have been added. Yes, so then she says, where is Fairfax? He told me 10 a.m. sharp. And then a superior officer enters. So he enters John Fairfax. But she's talking to someone here, right? She's not just standing in an empty room announcing, where's Fairfax? So whoever she says this to, like some soldier that's probably sitting at the desk minding the papers, is completely unimportant to reconstruction of the scene. Which means here she should be meeting Fairfax, but that's still not someone we can pick. Can we just pick her? So now we get it's distorted, the reconstruction isn't correct. So we have to pick him here, but he's not a part of our selection yet. So what do I have to do for that to occur? So we've got 4 people added to the guest list, and they all need identifying. We have select title. So currently we have commander or sergeant, and then we've got the names, but we only collected Reginald. Now I'm like, oh, I was saying she's meeting John Fairfax because I got that from the other conversation where she was saying like, oh, she's saying, where is he? But then on this next reconstruction here, she says Reginald, not John. Is this multiple Fairfaxes? Just to confuse this further. Her fiance, John Fairfax, versus this other guy, Reginald, also Fairfax. Confusing. So the 10 a.m. thing is apparently 2 clues, but well, I guess one of the clues is that she remains here and meets with Fairfax at 11. The other one might be the fact that we revealed other locations that things could happen at. So yes, we have the mess hall here. The food smells surprisingly good, considering. But yes, right now we don't even know when someone would be here. I guess what we were told by Delphine is that they arrived at 8 onto the beach and then spread out from there. So even though we've been looking at like 10 a.m. right now for the meeting and slightly earlier for Cynthia meeting them, they obviously arrived slightly earlier than that, so we can go as far as this column here. But we know nothing about those soldiers, right? We don't know their names, we have no items assigned to them, so as much as we will be able to track them to these time slots, not yet, not right now. So for the lack of better ideas, I think with the limited timeline we have now, right? Because we're only talking about like 6 hours of time and only the location we haven't yet eliminated. It might just be the idea to snoop around with the item in those locations and, eliminate slots where nothing happened and then get the few slots where we need to track the people down if it's not just Cynthia. So let me see what I can dig up. Weirdly enough, Bones Room has nothing in it between 7 a.m. and 3 o'clock, right? No one comes here. But then, so was someone sneaking around in the earlier events that we don't know about? As far as I know, everyone who we previously knew was accounted for in those hours, right? They were either somewhere else or dead. So either was someone was sneaking or Bones Room is literally just misdirection and nothing ever happened there. Okay, so we get echo from the small photograph at 2 at the cemetery. Cynthia arrives by the chapel to see a few soldiers standing there having a smoke. Okay, so that explains why the 1 o'clock was giving incorrect reconstruction, but not partial, because some of the other soldiers are there that we were supposed to identify, but she's not there, so we couldn't listen. Excuse me, Corporal. Could you point me to Sergeant Miller? I beg your pardon? As good as it can be in the circumstances, Stanley. So we know it's Sergeant Miller and their Corporal Stanley? Cynthia surveys the cemetery. I don't see Bone and Vita, 2 of my fallen comrades, among the gathered. Is that all the bodies? Cynthia looks towards the clubhouse and spots a glimpse of what remains of Vitalina Petrovsky's dress in a pile of bone and ashes. You were just there, you say. At least they died together. They really did love each other. It's quite alright. Do you have a spare shovel for me? Cynthia leads them to a secluded part of the cemetery and starts digging. Don't be too harsh on the boy. Don't worry, Private. We'll get some soup afterwards, okay? Yeah, the Private not doing so well with the charred bodies situation. Okay, so there will be a Private we have to identify as well. And then nothing happens at 3 o'clock. So we have to identify the soldiers to get 1 and 2 fully. Okay, let's snoop more. Okay, so the clubhouse, there are things happening at 11, 12, and 1, but Cynthia's not there. Going with the previous conversation, it does sound like at least some of those soldiers she met at the cemetery were there to find the bodies. So again, if we can identify them later, we can probably figure this out. At 1 o'clock, Cynthia is at the jungle entrance. Cynthia makes her way through the bushes to find Isia's body, lying there. She drops to a crouch beside the girl. She reaches out and closes Isia's eyes shut. Poor girl. You're a long way from the kitchen. I wonder what you were doing all the way up here, my dear. As she stands, Cynthia gets a glimpse of an unusual color further down the bush. What's that then? Cynthia pushes up 3 branches out of the way and finds Babalian and Tao's bodies slammed against the tree trunk. Yes, he was here, and that's also where he died. She pats the body and finds the missed report tucked in his trousers. She takes a quick glance at it, yes, because Babalian snuck onto Lucas's boat, stole the report, and then took it back with him, but then he died anyway, so actually Cynthia manages to recover it. And that's in part of Lucas's story, right? They are taking the missed sample back with them, to report back to headquarters in United Kingdom, actually, to report back about the stuff the Japanese are developing. Well, that's a spot of luck. Maybe not everything was a total washout after all. Time to say the final goodbyes. As Cynthia makes her way down the hill, a group of men led by an imposing figure can be seen in the background, arriving on a steam engine. Okay, so they come to the railway, which is burned down, but I guess the tracks are still here. So whoever they are, we will also need to identify them. Okay, so more things happen at the jungle entrance, but Cynthia is not present for either of them. Then 3 o'clock at the mess hall. At 2 there's something there, but no Cynthia. But 3 o'clock she is here. Cynthia, an older officer, and a young soldier arrive at the mess hall, covered in mud and sweat. They drop their shovels by the entrance. Corporal Hudson. Where is Sergeant Miller? Okay, so when she went to the cemetery, she didn't find Sergeant Miller. A tall officer looks up from his paper as Cynthia and an older officer approach. Good to meet you, Sergeant Miller. Very much so, and it got me thinking. If I can get Commander Fairfax's blessing, I would have need of your assistance even further. Private Birdwhistle tells me you've been stationed in Sandakan for a few years, is that true? And he also tells me that the corporal is a survivalist and has dealt with the Ulu jungle most of his life. A new location has been added for the Ulu jungle. I would really like you to help me reach Sandakan by foot. All other avenues are death traps now, and I urgently need to see my fiancé who is still in the city. Okay, so he is not here. He's not here, but we have him on our list of people because it will be part of her journey that we need to identify him. And good soldiers is what I require. Make no mistakes, this will be an order. I'm just being civil by providing you a fair warning is all. A tall officer turns away from Cynthia and continues eating. A young soldier runs over and sits down next to them with a large bowl of soup and small bread, oblivious to the tension. That's quite a knife, Corporal. So we get a knife on a corporal, which might be the survivalist one, since he's supposed to go with her and then we can track him with his knife. A young soldier resumes his slurping, dunking his bread in as he goes. He stops abruptly and looks up at the stony-faced sergeant and the stilly Cynthia. Yeah, he's just like walked right into the situation because he was just so hungry. He was like, I don't care. Don't care what's going on. I must eat my soup. I presume, yes, the knife's been added. The missed report's been added. Who owns the missed report? I mean, Lucas did. And yes, that actually pops in. But obviously he's not carrying it, right? That's just to say who the owner is. As far as we know, Cynthia has it. But now we have the peril for Cynthia, the small photograph for Cynthia, and the report. Maybe she gives it to someone else. And then the knife is for the corporal, but I don't even know what's his name, which one of the pictures he's going to be. So that's later problems. Okay, so I basically used the items to narrow it down to where something is happening in the hours between 8 and 3 o'clock. what rooms have someone in them who's not necessarily Cynthia, or where it's blue, it's Cynthia and someone else in the room. So we have a few of those slots. But until I know who the soldiers are, which one's which, I can't fill those. So I have to get on figuring that out, I guess, or see if anything's been added to this journey. Okay, so we have the Ulu jungle now, a narrow trail obscured by dense foliage. And now we have Cynthia and John Fairfax here. Okay, so he can only appear in the journey, but not in the plantation. Now we know he's not there, so that's fine. Presumably she's here with more people. Interestingly, Ludwig is also available for this, so at some point he will be here. But yes, can we get any glimpses? So yeah, they're here, morning of December 18. Cynthia is standing guard at 3 a.m., chewing on a licorice root, staring at the orange glow of the distraction happening miles away from them. I'm not tired. I'll start up a small fire. Do you want a brew? Cynthia gets the water on the boil. I'd really like to know, too. It all seems so simple, but it all went to hell when the Japanese landed, and now I'm so far away from my loved ones. It just doesn't seem like it was worth it. Brew is ready. Okay, so they're just having a 3 a.m. tea with someone who's there. And then next we have afternoon on December 18th. So let's see if we're still getting a read on Cynthia here. Yes. A young soldier is stuck directly behind Cynthia. He hasn't stopped talking since they've cleared the plantation fence. Suddenly, a violent crashing erupts in the canopy directly above them. Branches snap like pistol shots. A young soldier lets out a high-pitched yell, stumbling back and nearly bowling Cynthia over as he fumbles to bring his rifle to his shoulder. Yeah, he's just scared, inexperienced, sent into the jungle. And we have evening December 18th. Cynthia, those are all your go-downs at the harbor. And that glow, that's the city burning. Cynthia sits at the mouth of the cave, watching the distant fires of her destination. Okay, so Sandaken is under attack and it's burning. And obviously she's trying to get her to get back to her fiancé, which is not a good sign if the city's under attack. And then morning December 19th, they're still here. Cynthia sits up, shaking the damp from her gabardine coat. She starts to lace her boots up. I'll go get some kindling. You men keep bickering. It's a capital way to let the Japanese know exactly where to find us. Okay, she's not pleased with the quality of the people she got. Then afternoon December 19th. Okay, so nothing happened here, which means they moved on to what the next location is. But we don't know what it is. We just know they spent some time in the Ulu jungle. So I have to return to the plantation and figure out who is who, because otherwise we can't move on. We can't move on from here. So back to this 10 a.m. at the command post, right? Because that's the one highlighted as, there are clues here. Why are you ignoring them? She's looking for Fairfax. And then in the next thing, she says Reginald, and it's a superior officer. Initially, I got confused being that's John Fairfax because she says Fairfax, but that's not the same guy. Okay, so the guy's name is going to be Reginald Fairfax, okay? Surely, yes, multiple people can be called Fairfax, and that's fine. And then in this conversation from the journey, she says, is the commander in the command post? Like, where would the commander be? So is he commander, Reginald Fairfax? And she talks about Miller and his men. So Miller is gonna be like highest up position in that crew, right? If it's his men. So if we're gonna name someone Commander Reginald Fairfax out of these 4 people, it feels very much like he's wearing a hat that I would associate with like higher up officers. I am absolutely not clued up on like British uniform in World War II, so I'm just making general assumptions, right? Like this looks like a higher up officer hat, while those guys here are just wearing standard helmets, and this kid here is basically like the lowest rank. He's not got anything. He's gonna probably be like the private that was getting disturbed by the bodies and whatever, and scared in the jungle. Okay, so are you Commander Reginald Fairfax? Yes, you are. Cool. That helps, because that means, well, can we do this then? Is Cynthia and Commander talking here at the start of the journey together? No, that's not enough people yet, which means we can go back here and back to the command post and do the 11 a.m. between Cynthia and Reginald. Yes, finally. Finally something. Reginald, your timepiece must be fast. It's 11 a.m. sharp. Reginald grabs the lighter off the desk and lights up a cigar. Yes, is it the same lighter as before? Or is it just his one? It's just, you know, the style at the time. Everyone get a gold lighter to show off that they got money and positions. Cynthia, Reginald, it's good to see you despite the circumstances. And you said 10, but no matter. Reginald? It's Commander Fairfax to you when you're on my turf, agent. I apologize. Stiff upper lip and all that. Never been my strong suit. Okay, so he gets, like, offended that she's being too familiar. Quite. Reginald takes the manifest from Cynthia's hands and puts it back on the desk. Yeah, and it's like, stop touching my stuff. Now that the pleasantries have been taken care of, do be a sport and tell me what the hell is bringing someone like you to this desolate plantation on the eve of war, no less. I had leads that the Raja and the Triad were both putting the squeeze on plantation managers. Being able to get the jump on both with one spiderweb was just too good to pass on. The Japanese had other ideas. Who else knows you're here? My dear mother. And my to-be, of course, Reginald, rising an eyebrow. Quite. Yeah, he's like, she's being evasive, right? Clearly, her superiors know she's here, but she's just being secretive, and he's not appreciating that. Cynthia, I do have a favor to ask you. Reginald just stares at Cynthia. Can I requisite some of your men to help me bury the poor souls with dignity in the cemetery by the chapel? This massacre was terribly unnecessary. Those were good people, and they fought hard to the very end. Every blasted last one of them. I had grown quite fond of this family in the few hours I did manage to spend with them. They're all yours. I'll get Sergeant Miller to help you pick out some men to help you dig. A mass grave was being dug behind the workers' quarters for the Japanese soldiers and pirates. I suggest you go warn them quick before they start throwing all the bodies in there together. Cynthia runs up to the workers' quarters as Reginald approaches the soldier on guard at the entrance. Private, get Sergeant Miller. I've got a job for him. Okay, so we know she goes to the workers' quarters at 12. And we even have the partial of that, right? We have the partial of that from before. It just, we don't know who she's talking to. It just says a young man. So again, some sort of private, low-ranking soldier, right? So I'm curious about this lighter here, right? Because while it's highlighted as a ward, it didn't bring up a new item. And that's because we already have a lighter in our inventory, the one that Jeremiah had. And then the one that Ludwig picked up. And actually, if we look at the lighter's timeline, it says that it is in the command post held by Reginald. I guess I can use it in the command post because it was there, so it might be there at the following hours. Yes, so we have something at 12. Reginald. Thomas, a new name. What was the commotion outside just now? Good, I'll leave it in your capable hands. In the meantime, I have a tiresome little errand for you. Muster up a couple of young men and assist little Miss Pipsqueak bury her people. Maybe we'll shut her up and get her out of my hair. Okay, well, he doesn't like her. He doesn't like her either because he's like, whatever, MI5 business, getting into our business, right? What are you doing here? I'm the officer, you come here, call me by a first name. Or, you know, he's just like, women. Women getting into men's business. How dare they? Either way, he doesn't like her. None of your business, Sergeant. Know your place. Okay, so we've got Sergeant Thomas. So I've previously had Sergeant Miller as well, and that's confirmed because they actually say it as a full sentence. And I mean, it's not confirmed that it's Sergeant Thomas because obviously this is fragment, so it could have literally been a huge amount of text between and the Sergeant Miller arrives and that's who he's talking to. Like, this part is definitely a lot more deduce what's going on, right? Gather the little fragments and figure it out. So far, at least from the few little bits, seems more challenging than the base game, right? The original reconstruction. Because after doing the Lucas, Loon, and Rose journey, that one was entirely just straightforward clicking forward, right? It was literally just, oh yeah, well, it's the three of them going forward to the next location. This one is like unknown people in unknown places, which is fine, but it feels like the game basically comes in three parts and they're very different from each other, so you have to readjust how you think about them in terms of how you need to go about reconstructing the events. And then he just says, carry on. Okay, well, what about 1 o'clock? Are you still here with your lighter? Yes, you are. Reginald is examining the map and working out their next move. He tries to get a signal on the wireless. A lieutenant walks in. That's the last thing I need. I'll go see what he wants. Thank you, Lieutenant. Okay, Lieutenant walks in, but Lieutenant is not a title for us to collect, which means none of the people we'll be dealing with is a Lieutenant. And then there's nothing at 2 because I already eliminated, but something at 3. Reginald takes a bottle of whiskey and a glass out of the box on the floor. I need a drink and then we can get ready to depart. Reginald sits quietly as he contemplates what next few days will bring. Okay, because I guess they just clean up and leave, right? Everyone's dead here, there is no reason to stay. They've probably got other business trying to deal with the invasion across the island. So that's all here, which means he basically almost doesn't leave the command post. He may be somewhere at 2 o'clock, and before 10, it's not been built yet, so... But he's like standing by the veranda, right? Because when he met Cynthia earlier... When he met Cynthia earlier, even though it's just reconstructed with just hair and he's just known as superior officer, I guess before the command post gets constructed, he might be about... Yes, he's now been filled in at the Cynthia's timeline at 8. He's the superior officer there that tells her to meet him at 10 sharp for the briefing, and then it's not 10, but he still lies about it because he just wants to mess with her. But that means he might be hanging around where this is being built. This is a bit confusing because for Cynthia's timeline, it says this happens in the chapel, right? But it actually moves on. It says Reginald by the veranda is not struck as easily, right? So where are you exactly? Are you at the chapel or are you at the veranda? I guess because there is no more timeline at the chapel, but there is timeline at the veranda, I can check on him with the lighter. Okay, well, someone's there at the veranda, but it's not him with his lighter. Okay, so we have this one slot at 2 o'clock where it gave me nothing at the command post, right? Nothing happened here, which means Fairfax might be somewhere else, maybe with his lighter. So we can bounce the lighter in different locations that we have available at the time. So we have jungle entrance, and we do get a partial, so he went to the jungle entrance. Reginald Fairfax and his lieutenant arrived by the perimeter fence. They're greeted there by a man and his escort of Iban warriors. The Iban warriors were the most legendary and feared warriors in the Malay archipelago. No match other than their warriors. In traditional loincloths, painted in tattoos and armed with modern rifles and ancient curved swords. Reginald. Dear Raja, we didn't expect to see the Sarawak flag this far north. This is charted company land. What brings you over to the border? We've repelled the first wave, sir. The Navy has the coast under a watchful eye, and the mist is dissipating. It's a bit hairy, but we're holding the line. You can't be serious. Are you trying to just march in here and take over company property in the middle of the war, sir? You're not here to protect anything. You're here of your own interest. Reginald and his lieutenant walk back towards the plantation. I mean, yes, we know part of Raja's plan was to kill the people at the plantation, or at least kill Jeremiah, the owner, and then take over, right? They wanted the land. They wanted to take it away. Their plan was messed up by simultaneously the Triads getting involved through Ludwig and the Japanese attacking. Everyone just picked the same date. The man's a ghost from the 19th century and he's still trying to outmaneuver the Admiralty. We don't need any more bloodshed and we know the island is lost. There's no sense in squabbling over cinders. Let him take over the plantation and its ghost. It will be a short-lived victory by the time the Japanese have regained their second wind and return in force. Yeah, so they're like, the place is lost anyway. Like, we're not gonna try and hold it. They can have it. But then what? Are we able to just say he was here alone because of the rule of some characters are not important? No. Some characters in the scene are important enough to be identified. The man? Because it seems like the light purple identifiers for people, they can be replaced by an identified person later. So we have to figure out who's that going to be, I think. Because the lieutenant, it appeared here and previously, but it's just in plain text, so it seems like the lieutenant is not important. So I think, even though we don't have his timeline filled in because of all the partials, we know mostly where Fairfax has been across the time, right? I guess maybe the earlier slots still, we can place him somewhere. 8, 9, and 10, like, he talks to Cynthia by the veranda at 8, even though she's placed in the chapel. So let's try the lighter in those slots. Okay, veranda at 8 is nothing already, right? So we can't put him there. Because I guess it counts as him being at the chapel, even though we only needed Cynthia to see him there. So where is he at 9? Okay, so 10 a.m. in the study with the lighter. Gives Reginald lifts the shiny object from the pocket. It's a lighter. He whistles. That's nice, Daniel. Gold-plated. Reginald pockets the lighter and walks out the room. Oh, yes. I forgot that bit. I thought Ludwig took the lighter when he left. He didn't. He went back to the study with Bone, I think, during the attack. And they found Jeremiah's body. And then he just did that. Yeah, gave it back to Jeremiah like, I think it's yours. Yes, I forgot that scene. So that's why I was confused, like, how did he get it back from Ludwig? How is it the same lighter? Okay, that explains that. But then, is he here alone? Is he here with someone else? Okay, it's just him. And that's everything in the study. That's the final study scene. Reginald walks calmly into the study, surveying their environment. He looks out the window to see the last of Japanese soldiers run out into the jungle getting pursued by his men. Yes, because this is at 10, where they're supposed to have the briefing, but he's actually just wandering around the house. He then leans out the window towards the Japanese lounge's attempt to get away as Royal Navy ships are blocking their way. We got lucky this time. Really lucky. He lingers there for a bit, admiring the fireworks, then goes to step back out and he notices something shine from the breast pocket of Jeremiah Goodwill's body on the floor. He crouches down to inspect Jeremiah's further. How peculiar. You've not been shot. What really happened here? Reginald lifts the shiny object from the pocket. It's the lighter. He whistles. That's a nice downhill. Gold-plated. Yeah, he pockets the lighter, walks out the room. And that's how he ends up having it. Okay, so, well, that's one thing filled in. Now that I've done that, I'm wondering if, yes, maybe some of the other bits I have for him in blue, maybe it's also like he's alone there. I think this one, yeah, he's speaking to people like, Thomas, you're not a business sergeant. But then the one at 1 o'clock, it talks about a lieutenant, but again, a non-named lieutenant, we might be able to disregard him. Okay, yes, so that's a full scene just with him. Reginald is examining the map and working out their next move. He tries to get a signal on the wireless. A lieutenant walks in. Sir, there's a Charles Brooke, a full name. Charles Brooke. The name rings a bell. Where did I see it before? I'm sure I've seen it somewhere during my research on Borneo. Maybe in my glossary about the colonies. Okay, it's telling us, go in the glossary, figure it out. He asked for you. He's by the jungle entrance. That's the last thing I need. I'll go see what he wants. Thank you, Lieutenant. Okay, so Charles Brooke, go in the glossary. Are those the people that something said like someone was on a steam engine by the railway, but now they're by the jungle entrance? Okay, because, yes, they're not in here yet, because we don't have a picture, but it said glossary. Where would this be? The Japanese invasion? So it gives like timeline. We would need a picture of the guy, right? If we're going for like identification. Okay, so here it says, in 1941, Borneo was effectively split between two European powers. The British in the north were divided into 3 territories. Sarawak ruled by Charles Brooke of the Brooke family, the White Rajas. Then British North Borneo ruled by the British North Borneo Chartered Company. So this is where the Goodwill Plantation was part of Brunei and British Protectorate. And then the Dutch occupied the south. So that's the Raja that arrives and he says like, I want this. I want this land. So if we click this, yes, there. It's the White Raja. And I have a photo too. How convenient. Yes, always so very convenient for Delphine. So now, yes, he appears here. Charles Brooke. It's weird because him being the Raja, he's the high up rich man, right? The fact that he would just show up at a place that's basically just being invaded and be like, I want this land immediately. That seems like potentially a bit odd. It's also weird because I guess in my head when I see I was conspiring with the pirates, that felt like surely she wouldn't be conspiring with another group of outside forces, right? Because they're not like local Rajas. They're also the British, just a different flavor. But I guess maybe she didn't know because she was looking at it through like Ludwig, who actually wasn't even working for the Rajas. He was working for the Triads, just tricking other people. So I guess she didn't really know the machinations behind it, right? Or to her, it didn't really matter in that way. She was just thinking, if this particular plantation gets destroyed, she gets to leave. Well, anyway, so he arrives at the railway, Charles Brooke, that is. But it says no one's here between 8 and 2. Someone's here at 3. Okay, so this conversation says that Charles Brooke is at the jungle entrance. So that means in the next hour, 2 o'clock, they will meet at jungle entrance. I mean, I already seen the partial of it, right? So Reginald and Brooke. Reginald and his lieutenant arrive by the perimeter fence. They're greeted there by Charles Brooke. Yes, that replaces the Aman from before. And his escort of Ibran warriors in traditional loincloths, painted in tattoos and armed with modern rifles and ancient curved swords. He's also using indigenous people as part of his army, right, as part of his outfit, even though he's just another one of the British colony owners that reside here. Dear Raja, and yes, Reginald, dear Raja, we didn't expect to see the Sarawak flag this far north. This is chartered company land. What brings you over the border? Charles Brooke tapped his cane on the destroyed perimeter fence. Borders, Commander? The Japanese don't care about your borders. I don't see a company plantation here anymore. Do you? We've repelled the first wave, sir. The Navy has the coast under a watchful eye, and the mist is dissipating. It's a bit hairy, but we're holding the line. You're holding nothing. I hear what's being said on the wires. The king's army is spread too thin, and if the chartered company can no longer protect its assets, perhaps it's time for a sturdier hand to oversee these estates. You can't be serious. Are you trying to just march in here and take over company property in the middle of war, sir? The colonial office is 5,000 miles away and blacked out by the Germans. I am right here. If this plantation is a total loss, it becomes a protectorate of the Raja. I will not have a Japanese foothold on my doorstep. I'll take care of protecting this land. You're not here to protect anything. You're here for your own interest. Charles Brooks smacks his cane hard on the floor in anger. I'm here for Borneo, Commander. The island is old, and it has a long memory. It remembers the pirate republics and will remember the Japanese as nothing but smoke in history. The question is, will it remember the British? This was just a courtesy warning. I will be in my carriage awaiting your departure. Reginald and his lieutenant walk back towards the plantation. The man's a ghost from the 19th century, and he's still trying to outmaneuver the Admiralty. We don't need any more bloodshed than we know the island is lost. There's no sense in squabbling over cinders. Let him take over the plantation and its ghost. It will be a short-lived victory by the time the Japanese have regained their second win and return in force. Will it remember the British? Probably not fondly. So yes, he's just thinking like he's making gains here, but yeah, presumably won't last long as Reginald is predicting. He says, I'll be in my carriage awaiting your departure, which means where does he go? To the railway. That's why this 3 o'clock slot is open. So just Charles here. And that's everything for the railway. Charles Brooks sits ensconced within the velvet-lined interior of his private carriage, watching through silk curtains as the British Navy begin the task of withdrawing to their launches. On a small wooden table, a silver tray is flowing with a variety of fresh meat and fruits. A bottle of sparkling wine is chilling in an ice bucket. The man is like a block of wood, solid, silent, and ancient, patiently waiting for the estate to empty out so he can finally claim the remains of the land for himself. He fancies perhaps that the latest acquisition will bring him some fleeting contentment. Or perhaps he doesn't know what he wants anymore after over half a century spent expanding his kingdom. What does one more acre of land truly signify? And does he really believe, in the deep recesses of his soul, that he can hold back the Japanese war machine with a few iron blades? Or is he being willfully ignorant or purpose because acknowledging the truth that his kingdom was built on a house of cards would be too much? Okay, so this is just like a reflective moment, right? We don't get any more information to advance the story. We just get the whole, yeah, you're on an island about to be invaded, and probably everything you've built here will be destroyed. Presumably, it doesn't end well for him, but it's not his story we're interested in. Yeah, that's the entirety of his timeline, right? He only appears in those 2 slots. So while it added a little bit more context, it doesn't advance the whole, we need to identify those other soldiers that are here. And I think the info we have that there is a Sergeant Miller, right? That's his surname. And in terms of first name, there is that scene at 12 in the command post where Reginald says both Thomas and none of your business Sergeant. So we have 2 places where someone is referred as Sergeant with a first name and a surname. So there is potential that Sergeant Thomas Miller is someone's full name and rank. But which one would it be, right? Because the commander, at least, I was like, yeah, the hat. I think it's gonna be not this guy. I think this is like the lowest ranking soldier, private, whatever you have. Well, I mean, we could try some assumptions, right? Like, if the commander was here, does it then go in rank? Like, because what I assume is the lowest ranking guy is at the end. So we had a sergeant and we had a corporal. But The internet tells me that corporal is higher ranking than the sergeant, so if so, the sergeant would be here. So Sergeant Thomas Miller? No, that's incorrect. But I think the name is correct, but the picture might be not correct, so maybe it's this guy instead. Sergeant Thomas Miller? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay, but now we have Thomas Miller, so we should be able to maybe get some scenes with him and other people that we know of. I mean, we know he talks to Fairfax at the command post, right? So it's that those two over there, yes, at 12. Thomas, reporting as ordered. You wanted to see me, sir? Reginald. Ah, Thomas. What was the commotion outside just now? By the shore? Okay, a new location. More locations. I really don't know how to explain it, quite frankly, sir, but I've got it in hand. Good. I'll leave it in your capable hands. In the meantime, I have a tiresome little errand for you. Muster a couple of your men and assist little Miss Peepsqueak bury her people. Maybe we'll shut her up and get her out of my hair, yes. We've seen that. If I may so, do you know her, sir? You seem rather riled by the woman. She strikes me as innocuous enough. It's none of your business, Sergeant. Know your place. Okay, so yes, he's like, why you on here already? But he doesn't want to talk about it. It's quite so. I spoke out of turn. I crave your pardon, Commander. Corporal Hudson was helping with the clubhouse fire. I'll go talk to him and he can take Tweety with him. He was really helping get the civilian bodies to the chapel. Carry on. So I have Corporal Hudson already, because I was talking about there was a corporal. As for Tweety, I did write Bird Whistle. Someone's name was Bird Whistle. And that sounds like just the kind of nickname they would give that person, right? Tweety. Tweet, tweet, like a bird. As Thomas Miller leaves the command post, I can see Cynthia Civil running up past the croquet lawn towards the jungle entrance. Okay, so it tells us that she's there, but I'm pretty sure, I got a partial read on that, so I know it at least happened. I just didn't have enough to fill it in. I mean, let's go there, right? Let's review. I had her there looking at the corpses, but actually, she might just be there alone, right? I was just going through with the items and didn't super consider that, so let's try it. So yeah, this is jungle entrance at 1 o'clock. It's just Cynthia alone. Yeah, Cynthia makes her way through the bushes to find Icea's body. Lying there, she drops to crouch beside the girl. She reaches out and closes Icea's eyes shut. Poor girl, you're a long way out from the kitchen. I wonder what you were doing all the way up there, my dear. As she stands, Cynthia gets a glimpse of an unusual color further down the bush. What's this then? She pushes a few branches out of the way, finds Babalian's and Tao's body slumped against the tree trunk. She pats the body and finds the mist report. This is basically the same thing as I saw through the echo, because it was literally just Cynthia doing things and saying things, so there is no other side that was missing. And that's, yeah, the people arriving by steam engine, which is the Raja. So we know she takes Icea's body, presumably takes it to the cemetery to be buried with the other people. Yeah, silly me, I've missed this before. I was just like, okay, we'll get back to identifying those things when I find the other people. Didn't consider she might have been alone. Okay, well, we have a few spots with like, there is more clues here. But I assume that clue is she goes to the cemetery. Hare and Miller at the cemetery might not be enough because the older soldiers are there. And in the previous hour, he's there with the other soldiers again, so we can't just fill that in with him. Actually, there might be a similar thing going on for the corporal as was going on with Thomas Miller, where one place he's referred to as Corporal Hudson and the other place he's referred to as Corporal Stanley, and I wrote it down as separate people, separate notes, but it's Stanley Hudson, a full name. One of that was from the partial at the cemetery, right? Cynthia talks about Stanley and she says Corporal, so I kind of assume those two are linked. And then the other thing was at the mess hall, where there's the corporal with a knife. And here Cynthia says Corporal Hudson. So I think it's Corporal Stanley Hudson. This is also where they talk about Private Bird Whistle, but I have to find somewhere where they may have said his first name that I haven't yet caught on to the fact that he was the same person. Okay, well, I think, therefore, this will be the Corporal, Stanley Hudson. There we go. This will be Private Bird Whistle, but yes, I am missing the first name, so I cannot even attempt to do this. So that means we should be able to do the mess hall, because it should be Cynthia, Sergeant Miller, and Stanley Hudson? No? Someone else is here. Oh, a young soldier. So, okay, so Private Bird Whistle is needed for this as well. But we have the knife, and she talks about the knife to the corporal, right? He comments on that's quite a knife, corporal. Which means we can now go back to the inventory and assign this to Stanley Hudson. Yeah. Which means we can now use the knife to listen in on what he says. And we also have the shore. The calming sound of the waves is deceptively concealing the carnage around the estate. Yes, so Delphine told us that basically she sensed the 4 people arriving at 8 on the shore. So if we don't have private bird whistle yet, but we could use the knife to listen in. Yeah, Stanley Hudson grabs a young soldier by the collar. Come on, Tweety, let's go explore. Which way do you fancy? Come on, Slugger, we can get a sneaky drink if there's anything left. Okay, so yes, that's just them entering and being like, what are we doing here? Stealing the people's booze. So not too much right now, and I presume they leave from here. So where do they go off to after this? We can get a sneaky drink if there's anything left. Would that mean they try to go to the clubhouse? Because that would be the drinking place, but obviously the clubhouse has basically been leveled. Let's see, well, we have some clubhouse slots. 11, 12, 1 o'clock. Were they here? Yes. Oh yes, because there was talk about them like picking up the bodies. Hudson, bugger it. This is very bad. You over there, yeah, you. Why are you standing there gawking at it? See the wash house over there? It will have buckets. Go, get some quick. And you, go empty some of our crates onto the sand and start filling them with water. Don't yes me, sir, I'm not finished. Don't you dare carry the water all the way up here. Get a chain going, grab whoever you can, shouting over the roar of the fire. So, and get me a spade so I can start smoldering the base. Okay, so the clubhouse is still on fire at this point. Are they here at 12? Yes, Stanley Hudson is shoveling sand onto the roaring base of the fire, his silhouette flickering against the orange glare. Behind him, a human chain of young soldiers and boy seamen are hard at work. They hurl bucket after bucket of water into the flames, their faces blackened by the soot and slick with a mix of sea spray and sweat. They don't deter and keep going as fast as they can. And then, potentially they're still here at 1? Soldiers are forming a chain from the water to the clubhouse, hoisting buckets and makeshift barrels to douse the fire before it spreads. Stanley Hudson is growling orders overseeing the work as Thomas Miller approaches. Yes, sir. Tweety, really? That boy won't shut up. With all due respect, I'd rather he be lazy and moody and quiet. Sir, yes, sir. Okay. Well, potentially, the 12 o'clock, is it just him here as an identified person and everyone else is just random young soldiers? Yes, okay, so that gives us that scene, so that's the, yes, they don't deter, keep going as fast as they can, but it adds, although they're exhausted, they do not waver through sheer dogged willpower. Their tenacity finally pays off as the fire starts to slow down and gets under control. Okay, so we didn't get those 2 lines on the item read because it wasn't specifically about Stanley Hudson, it was just about the group. And here in this next one, it's Stanley talking to Thomas Miller, so we should be able to get read with by picking both of them? Yeah. Soldiers are forming a chain from the water to the clubhouse, hoisting buckets and makeshift barrels to douse the fire before it spreads. Stanley Hudson is growling orders overseeing the work as Thomas Miller approaches. Thomas. Corporal Hudson, do you have a minute? Stanley. Yes, sir. I have need of you by the chapel. The surviving woman, a lady solicitor, is in need of help to bury the civilians appropriately. The commander has asked me to get some people together, and I, in turn, am putting you in charge. Grab bird whistle on your way. Tweety, really? The boy won't shut up. Yes, but he's a hard worker and always happy to help. With all due respect, I'd rather he be lazy and moody and quiet. Just do as you're told, Corporal. Sir, yes, sir. I'll be grabbing a spot of food if you need me. Okay. Yeah, so they keep talking about Tweety. Bird whistle, I guess 2 ways, right? He's called bird whistle, so they call him Tweety, but also because he just keeps yapping like a little bird that won't stop singing. So yes, they all go to the cemetery, right? Because that's where they are meeting Cynthia later. I wasn't getting a name. Can I check this with the knife here? Oh, okay, because yes, I wasn't getting a name from hair reading, but I may be able to get something from him. Stanley. Last I saw the sergeant, he was striking for the mess hall. You must excuse young Tweety here. He has no manners. Okay, so we have here Stanley Hudson slaps a young soldier around the back of the head. Give the woman a minute, Arthur. You can't see she's paying her respects. Okay, so Tweety's name is Arthur. We can name him now, and then we get the full scenes. So we've got Private Arthur Bird Whistle Tweety. And that's now finally the achievement for all guests. All guests across the whole game with all of the not so little bits that happen after the ending and the second ending. Okay, so we should now be outfitted to uncover all the scenes, right? Because we have everyone here and on the journey. So that means starting with the shore as they arrive at 8. It's the 4 of them. The Japanese army is making mincemeat of what remains of Harrow's men. When the hulking silhouettes of naval ships and armored launches are hitting the shore, the British Navy have arrived. Thomas, shouting over the sound of gunfire and the roll of engines. All right, men, you know the drill. Let them know the king's men have found them. The Japanese officers realize they are facing a fresh battalion and are caught off guard on low on ammunition. Fearful of being cut off from their transport, the Japanese signal a frantic withdrawal, vanishing into the thick bushes to make a run back to the secluded beach. The ones who are getting cut off from the rest start running towards the Ulu jungle instead, hoping to hide deep in the trees. Some of the Japanese soldiers, feeling cornered, hunker down behind low walls and start firing. As the launches land, some of the men catch stray bullets. Reginald, open sights! Mow the scoundrels down! The remaining warring soldiers are caught in the murderous hail of machine gun fire. Reginald Fairfax yells as the last of Japanese soldiers are silenced. Cease fire! Arthur Birdwhistle and his fellow privates plunge into the waist-deep water, resting with heavy rope lines to secure the launches against the tide. The bow grates drop with a metallic clang, and the rest of the landing party debarks onto the sand. Stanley Hudson grabs Arthur Birdwhistle by the collar. Come on, Tweety, let's go explore. Which way do you fancy? Birdwhistle. I've never seen a veranda this nice, Corporal. Look at all that glass. Well, what's left of it? Come on, Slugger, we can get a sneaky drink if there's anything left. Okay, so they weren't actually talking about the clubhouse, they were talking about the veranda, but it led me to what I needed, so works too. A ghastly quiet returns to the beach, broken only by the crackle of the burning clubhouse, as scouting privates move out, searching the buildings for any survivors or skulking foes. The boy seamen begin a chain, unloading Admiralty crates from the launches into the silt. Reginald Fairfax surveys the shamble of carnage as he sees Cynthia Seville emerge from the chapel. I'll be damned! Cynthia, as I live and breathe. He watches with a smirk as she brushes past the startled lieutenant and is heading towards the guest house. Reginald shouting across the beach, "You can go clean up and meet me at 10 sharp for debriefing." Yeah, so that's that initial scene we saw fully revealed. Okay, so we know Stanley and Arthur, they go to the veranda. So we can hop onto there then, at 9. So just Stanley and Arthur. Yeah, Stanley and Arthur enter the veranda, moving in a practiced crouch, their bayonets fixed. They're clearing the deck, hunting the last of the Japanese soldiers who had scattered into the garden. All they find are the bodies of Dieter and Jiro. Stanley, all clear, lad. Arthur, you think they'll be back? Stanley leans his rifle against a cane table. He's helping himself to a drink at the bar. No doubt about it. They'll be back in force before you know it. We just caught them by surprise is all. Arthur looking down at Jiro. Look at that Japanese. In his dungarees. You think he was 5th column and that's why them two had a scuffle? Did you hear about the Japanese barber who turned out to be a spy and cut the throats of all his customers when he received the signal? Stanley, amused. The signal? Oh yes, Corporal. They have very complex and hidden signals that they wait for and then bam, they strike. They turn from your friendly photographer to a deadly warrior. Does the camera hide a gun? Maybe the flash is gunpowder. Do not joke. They have ears and eyes everywhere. They had been serving you tea and cutting your hair for a decade, only to emerge as master of your distraction. Arthur gets really excited as Stanley pours himself a second drink. And have you heard about the Black Dragon Society? They've been funding all the Japanese 5 and dime shops as front organizations. Why do you think that shop sells cheap toys and silks to the locals? To build goodwill and turn locals against us, feeding them lies about us. Thomas Miller enters. Come on, boys, party's over. We need to get our house in order on the double. Okay, again, kind of bending the rules of the game where he enters as a character into the scene, but we didn't have to say that. We didn't have to identify that. But yes, this kind of goes into another aspect of the war where obviously Japanese people were living in other countries when the war started, and now suddenly they've gone from just having a life there to being suspected of being agents, and then having the lives they're built torn apart and destroyed, even if they didn't support what was happening, right? So that probably means they leave the veranda, or are they here now with Thomas Miller having a discussion? Okay, they haven't left yet. They have a conversation first. And that's everything for the veranda. Thomas, Private Birdwhistle, get to the shore and get a detail together. pointing at the bodies on the floor. Carry these men and the other civilians from around the estate over to the chapel yard, next to the cemetery. They deserve our respect for burial. We'll do it properly, by the book. Arthur steps outside. The fire at the clubhouse is still raging. Thomas. And Hudson. When you're done with that drink, do me a favor and help organize the quelling of the fire over there. It's getting dangerously close. Yeah, he's like, the place is on fire and you're here just getting the booze out. Stanley downs his drink in one gulp. On it! Loud screams erupt from outside. Arthur. The Japanese are coming out of the water! Help! Thomas rushes out to the shore to see what's going on. I presume it's not gonna be the Japanese, because later on Thomas talks to Fairfax and it's like, oh, it's hard to explain what happened at the shore, but it's gonna be Arthur and Thomas on the shore next. So at 11, not Stanley, he goes to the clubhouse. Thomas Miller runs over to the beach from the veranda and witnesses dead bodies of Japanese and Royal Navy soldiers washing ashore. What the hell is going on here? We have no ideas here. These bodies started washing up on the shore. They're not our men. I don't understand it. Look, they've had their boots and belts taken off. Does no one have any respect for the dead? Thomas. The work of pirates, I will wager, savages. Put our British compatriot victims with our fallen comrades. We'll give them a proper sea burial. Take the Japanese to the hall. Arthur. Sir, yes sir. You two, come with me. We'll get a large gurney together, using some of those big leaves and some ropes. We can then pull a few of them at once. Someone else approaches. Sergeant Miller, the commander is looking for you. He's in the command post. Those are the soldiers from Lucas's launch, right? Lucas and Moon and Rose taking their stuff and then throw them overboard because they wanted to escape, because that was part of them leaving. So they said it's the work of pirates, but actually it's not. So yes, that then takes us to Miller goes to meet Fairfax at the command post, but we already have that as a scene. But that means the cemetery should now be possible, right? Because Birdwhistle is here by himself at 1 o'clock. The atmosphere by the chapel is a ward apart from the rest of the estate. It's eerily peaceful. Arthur Birdwhistle has gathered a new detail, handpicking older seamen to carry the bodies of Jeremiah Goodwill and the other victims, enveloped in white sailcloth, and Union Jacks retrieved from the launches. They place them gently on the grass side by side with quiet reverence. Arthur Birdwhistle stands there with the men for 1 minute of silence, out of respect before they get their cigarettes out and take a well-deserved break by the stone wall of the chapel. Okay, and then Cynthia arrives with at least some other of the people. Because yes, Stanley's here, Birdwhistle is here. Not sure about Thomas, but let's try Cynthia, Stanley, and Arthur, yeah, because they meet Thomas Miller later at the mess hall. And that's everything at the cemetery. Cynthia arrives by the chapel to see a few soldiers standing there having a smoke. Excuse me, Corporal, could you point me to Sergeant Miller? Stanley. Last I saw the sergeant, he was striking for the mess hall. Arthur. Are you the man who loosened that rocket? Cynthia. I beg your pardon? Arthur. We saw you give the Japanese what from the stern as we approached. Bloody good shot, if I may say so. Stanley. You must excuse young Tweedy here. He has no manners. Name Stanley. How do you do? Cynthia. As good as it can be in the circumstances, Stanley. Stanley. I hear you have a job for us. Tweedy and I here are to be your muscles, as it were. How many graves are we digging? Cynthia surveys the cemetery. I don't see Bowen and Vita, two of my fallen comrades, among the gathered. Is that all the bodies? Stanley. There are also a couple of charred bodies by the clubhouse. I was just there quelling the last of the fire. There are nothing but scraps of scorched linen that suggest civilians. I'd reckon they would be better served by a water funeral with the rest of our boys. Cynthia looks back towards the clubhouse and spots a glimpse of what remains of Vitalina's dress in a pile of bones and ashes. You were just there, you say. At least they died together. They really did love each other. Arthur, interrupting Cynthia's reflections. So where do you want us to start digging then? Stanley slaps Arthur round the back of the head. Give the woman a minute, Arthur. Can't you see she's paying her respects? Cynthia. It's quite all right. Do you have a spare shovel for me? Cynthia leads them to a secluded part of the cemetery and starts digging. Arthur. This is hungry work, this is. I hope there will be some grub left for us when we're done. Stanley. Be quiet and dig, man. Cynthia. Don't be too harsh on the boy. Don't worry, Private. We'll get some soup afterwards. Okay, I thought previously from the partial, he wasn't doing too well with the bodies, but no, he's just hungry. He just wants his soup. And that takes us to the mess hall at 3 o'clock, where it's all of them minus Reginald Fairfax, so it's Cynthia, Thomas, Stanley, and Arthur. Yeah. Cynthia, Stanley, and Arthur arrived at the mess hall covered in mud and sweat. They dropped their shovels by the entrance. Arthur. Chef, what's good? Cynthia. Corporal Hudson, where's Sergeant Miller? Stanley Hudson. He's the one sitting by himself, looking all stoic. Thomas Miller looks up from his paper as Cynthia and Stanley approach. Stanley. Hey, Sarge, this is the lady solicitor. Cynthia. Good to meet you, Sergeant Miller. Thomas. Likewise, I hope Corporal Hudson and Private Birdwhistle prove themselves useful. Very much so, and it got me thinking. If I can get Commander Fairfax's blessings, I would have need for your assistance even further. Private Birdwhistle tells me you've been stationed in Sandakan for a few years. Is that true? In fact, yes. I've been a local old hand for quite some years. What about it? And he also tells me that the corporal is a survivalist and has dealt with the Ulu jungle most of his life. Tweety has a big mouth, and it's also true. What are you getting at, Mom? I would really like you to help me reach Sandakan by foot. All other avenues are death traps now, and I urgently need to see my fiancé who is still in the city. With all due respect, we're soldiers, Mom, not babysitters. And good soldiers is what I require. Make no mistake, this will be an order. I'm just being civil by providing you with a fair warning is all. Is that all? I wish to return to my broth before it turns cold. Thomas turns away from Cynthia and continues eating. Arthur runs over and sits down next to them with a large bowl of soup and a small bread, oblivious to the tension. Lord, I'm famished. Arthur slurps his soup very loudly. He picks up his bread and tries to tear off a piece. Bloody hell, this is hard as rock. How's a lad supposed to cut this? Stanley angrily snaps the bread out of Arthur's hand. Give it here, you daft pigeon. Stanley takes out a sturdy clasp knife. Don't you ever keep your knife on your person? Sometimes I swear. Stanley cuts the bread in half with a flick and hands it to Arthur Birdwhistle. Cynthia. That's quite a knife, Corporal. Standard issue, ma'am. Arthur. Much obliged, Corporal. Arthur resumes his slurping, drinking his bread as he goes. He stops abruptly and looks up at the stony-faced sergeant and the steely Cynthia. Say, why is everyone looking so glum? I mean, she just came in here and started ordering people around, so they're like, what do you want, lady? And he's just here slurping his soup. Okay, but we still have, Wednesday at 2 open here, because I guess Thomas Miller is here by himself. Yeah, and that will complete the mess hall. Thomas is enjoying his soup quietly, reading a month-old newspaper he grabbed from the library when he was chasing the Japanese out of the house. Private comes to sit down next to him. Sarge, I wanted to apologize for the false alarm by the shore earlier. I just never seen anything like it. It's quite alright, Private. It's been a hell of a morning, we're all on edge. Still, what do you think happened to them? It was so random and savage. I don't think we'll ever find out, so I'd put it out of your mind. Just get them out of the water and put them where the rest of the victims. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to get back to my reading. Sir, with all due respect, this is old news, you know that. It just relaxes me to read about simple things, simple pleasures, and petty squabbles. Takes me out of this grisly life we're living currently and gives me hope we can return to normalcy someday. Right you are, sir. I shall leave you to it. So it's just him there. Anything else? Yes, we got a few more gaps. So we've got the shore at 9 after they were all there. So someone stayed here. We've got Reginald and Miller remaining. And yes, after the others leave, they're there. The beach is a shamble of smoke and spent ammo. Thomas and Reginald lean against a palm tree, watching the clubhouse blaze. Thomas takes a pack of Lucky Strikes out and offers one to Reginald, who refuses. Thomas exhales a long plume of smoke. It's a bloody tragedy, isn't it? They're not gonna let off. Reginald. They started like they mean to go on. Kota Baru was a bloodbath. Our men and the Indian troops fought violently from what I hear, but the Japanese took over with unbelievable speed. Kota Baru in northeast Malaysia was a critical military hotspot and the site of the first major battle of the Pacific War. Thomas, and that was the same time as Pearl Harbor. They're very cunning and organized. You'd have to give them that. Not just Hawaii. They struck Hawaii, the Philippines, and Malaya simultaneously. Terrifying. And my brother, he's stationed in Sandakan. He tells me they raced down the Malayan peninsula on bicycles. Top Brass was saying the jungle was impassable, and they proved them wrong on bloody bicycles. Can you imagine? Thomas finishes his cigarette. Right. I'd best make sure my men aren't pissing in the wind. Reginald. Just remember, they sank 2 our unsinkable battleships in less than 3 hours. Our time here is over. We just need to retreat gracefully. I'm not saying that doom and gloom to my men. I don't want deserters on my hands. Thank you very much. Thomas makes his way to the veranda, while Reginald makes a slow ascent towards the main house. His hands firmly clasped behind his back. Yeah, so they're just preparing to clean up the last few bits and be gone, because they know they can't win. Okay, so we have... what do we have left? The clubhouse at 11. That's just Stanley Hudson, the previous scene before him putting out the fire. The blaze is raging hard. The heat from the fire is so strong it makes it hard to get close. Embers are getting carried in the breeze and are starting to light up the fern in the area. Bugger it. This is very bad. You over there. Yeah, you. Why are you standing there gawking at it? See the wash house over there? It will have buckets. Go get some quick. Yes, sir. And you, get some of your crates onto the sand and start filling them with water. Yes, sir. Don't yes, sir. I'm not finished. Don't you dare carry the water all the way up here. Get a chain going. Grab whoever you can. The soldier runs towards the beach, Stanley shouting over the roar of the fire. And get me a spade so I can start smothering the base. Okay, that's the full scene previously. Again, I was like, surely other people are here, but they're the people we don't have to identify. We've got 3 o'clock at the command post. Presumably just Reginald, everyone else is accounted for. Reginald takes a bowl of whiskey and a glass out of a box on the floor. I need a drink, and then we can get ready to depart. He sits quietly as he contemplates what the next few days will bring. Yeah, so that's just like a closing scene for him. And one more Wednesday at 12. So that's Cynthia and Arthur in the workers' quarters. And yes, that's everything at the workers' quarters, and that's... I was gonna say everything at the plantation, but what is going on with Bones' room? The ascent towards the worker barracks is hard struggle. Arthur leads the detail while the boy seamen cling to the ropes of the makeshift gurney, pulling it up the hill. One of the boys lets the rope slip, and Arthur holds on hard. Steady it, boys, don't let it slip. If we let them slip down the hill, we'll be here all day getting the bodies out of the bushes. They're so heavy, and sir, they're starting to smell under the burning sun. It's unbearable. Come on now, we're nearly there. They reach the crest of the hill, and Arthur signals a halt. Break out the spades. I want a trench 6 feet deep and then wide. And sharply, do you hear? I need to go and get the civilian bodies together by the chapel now. I'm trusting you. Don't let me down. The young men start ripping some of the Japanese soldiers' uniform to use as makeshift masks to stop the nauseating smell of the rotting corpses. I mean, you're getting the uniforms of the rotting corpses. They already smell, surely. Cynthia ascends the slope towards the workers' quarters, and the stench just hits her like a brick. It's only been a few hours, but the heat is already affecting the decomposition of the bodies. As she reaches the top of the hill, her mind cannot comprehend the amount of bodies lying in front of her. A detail of boy seamen have a ghoulish task of digging up a mass trench. Wait, tell me, you do only have the Japanese soldiers and pirates for the pit, I trust. You're not committing any of the civilians that were murdered to this dog hole. One of the boy seamen leaning heavily on the filthy spade, he pulls down his makeshift mast, his face streaked with mud. No, ma'am, no civilians here. The civilian bodies are being rounded by the cemetery next to the chapel. We're keeping the Imperial infantry separate as per orders. Mind you, I did find a young house girl by the jungle entrance, but we've left her there under the tree canopy for now. She will keep better there until the details move up. A young servant. Could it be Isia? I didn't see her during any of the commotion. Cynthia salutes the young man. As you were? The boy replaces his mask and returns to his terrible task. Okay, so that's now all of this. What's with Bones' room? Because I can obviously hit it with a random item to eliminate all of the times and see if there's any slots that are open. Okay, I can confirm nothing ever happened in Bones' room. It was just added as a misdirection just to make us check. So that's truly everything at the plantation. There is nothing more. The timeline is filled, but that means we now know who joins Cynthia on her journey. So we start with the plantation. Obviously, we had the partial read from the Pearl, and she's talking about the commander at the command post, and then talking to the sergeant, so we know that's Miller. So is it Cynthia, Reginald, and Thomas? It's not. There is more of them. If we use the knife, we get Thomas Miller and Stanley Hudson. So it might be that it's just everyone who's going is there, plus Reginald, because they're just setting off. So Cynthia, Reginald, Thomas, and Stanley are confirmed, and Arthur might just be there because he's joining them, yes. So it's basically everyone. And that's everything there. She approaches a private who is standing guard. Cynthia, is the commander in the command post? The soldier nods and Cynthia enters the hastily constructed command post in the Goodwill plantation. Reginald. Good evening, Cynthia. I'm appraising the current situation. Please take a seat. We've done what we can here, sir. The fires are out and the dead are committed to the earth. But we both know the Japanese are merely regrouping in the mangroves. They'll be back soon and they will bring heavier metal next time. Precisely. The navy is spread very thin. I'm pulling my boys back to the ships to screen the coast. The green mist is carrying out west. We should be able to avoid it. We can't hold this location for long. I understand, which is why I must beg your indulgence. I need to strike for Sandakan immediately. My intendant is there. I was due to reconvene with him after this job. Reginald studying her for a long moment, then nodding slowly. Quite. Your intended. You don't have to tell me your reasons, but don't make me a fool. I can't spare a platoon, but I can give you a scouting party. I would very much like to take Miller as his men. They have proven useful today, and they seem to have the right background for this trek through the jungle. I do have a task they would be well suited for that would also meet your needs. 2 birds, 1 stone, as it were. They'll act as your escort and an early warning picket. If they sight any Japanese patrols moving through the primary forest, they'll do a double back and signal. And their orders once they reach the capital, they are to reconvene with the governor at the government house. They can carry my dispatches, all of the updates on the Navy's movements, and the necessity of the immediate evacuation. I'm much obliged, Commander. Just one last thing. Speak. Who arrived earlier? I saw them arrive by steam engine when I was at the jungle entrance. I don't know what you mean. I could have sworn I saw you go up and greet them as I was coming back down. I must have imagined it. Godspeed, Cynthia. Okay, so that's about the Raja arriving, and he doesn't want to talk to her about it. As Cynthia exits, Reginald looks up. Say hello to John for me. Cynthia stops short, turns around and pulls a small photograph from her pocket. She looks at it for a moment, then hands it over to Reginald Fairfax. It's John, a few weeks ago. You keep it. Yes, I was thinking, I know there could be multiple people called Fairfax, but if you do that in a one single narrative, you would think they're could be connected, right? So it's Reginald Fairfax, John Fairfax's dad. Yeah, it's John a few weeks ago, you keep it. The party gathers at the edge of Plantation, where the once manicured croquet lawn met the green wall of the jungle. Cynthia emerges from the wash house where she recuperated the pearl and hair affairs. Thomas is testing the edge of his parang as Stanley is finalizing getting his rucksack together. Thomas: right then, miss. The trek to Sandakan is beastly business in this weather. The mud is knee-deep and the leeches are abundant. Stay close to my heels and keep your eyes on the canopy. Stanley: don't you worry, miss. We'll have you in Sandakan Club for a gin fight before you can say Bob's your ankle. Arthur: how long will it take us? Sandakan feels so far away. Thomas: any other time, you could march there within 2 days, but we need to tread carefully and avoid the main road. So it could take up to 5 days, but ideally 4 days, God willing. Let's get a move on, gentlemen. I've an appointment in the city, and I don't mean to keep it waiting. Thomas: we'll head straight down the path to start with a make camp by the end of the trail. We'll be safe there tonight, and it will give us a good head start for traipsing through the Ulu jungle in the morning. Led by Thomas Miller, the small group plunges into the forest. The humidity swallows them instantly. The sounds of the plantation fading into the distance, but ominous deep booms are echoing from the direction they're heading. They reach the end of the logging track. Thomas Miller signals for a halt in a clearing in the middle of the bushes. They drop their heavy bags with grunt. Right then, we set up camp here. Hudson, get the ground shades rigged. Arthur, you scrounge for dry wood. I want a small, smokeless lake. Cynthia is collecting some vines with a parang. What's the watch, Bill Sergeant? 2 hour stints. Hudson, you're the first watch. Bird Whistle, you can take the graveyard watch from 2 till 4. Cynthia, I'll take the trigger hour before dawn. Cynthia interrupting. I'll take the midnight till 2. I can handle a rifle as well as any blue jacket. Don't let the skirts I was wearing earlier fool you. You're more than a lady solicitor, that's for sure. MI5. I try not to shout it from the rooftop, secrecy and all that. But seeing how we're about to depend on each other to survive, I owe you the courtesy of the truth. I appreciate it. I figure it will be something like that. An hour later, they huddle around the tiny, sheltered fire. A small tin of Horlicks is being heated over a spirit lamp. We're back to the Horlicks. Arthur, let's recount some stories, I say. Keep the spirits up. I was thinking about your story, Sergeant. About that random business in 15. You were really there, Sarge? Chasing ghosts in the mud? Yeah, I was there. The uprising escalated so quickly. It was a symbol of the broader tension and resistance of the colonial rule. Stanley, I saw Antanown, with my own eyes. Arthur, what is that? Not what, who? He was the greatest warrior that ever lived. So legendary he was believed to have supernatural powers. He led the rebellion. Cynthia, he must have been something. Stanley, I watched him burn. He burned like any other man. He screamed like any other man too. No such thing as supernatural powers. The cicadas begin to sing, signaling to Thomas that it's time to extinguish the fire. Thomas, time for the stand to... Arthur, what's that? The time just before sunset and just before dawn are the most dangerous for any camp in the jungle. Stand to is a sacred rule. The shifting shadow at this time make it hard to notice anything. We'd keep deathly quiet and arms ready at the bayonet for the next 30 minutes with eyes on the tree line. Stanley, listen out for the cicadas. If you stop hearing them, then something big is on the hunt. They all stand silent for a while. Then the sun is totally down. Thomas Miller breaks the silence. All right, Arthur, get to the perimeter. Keep your ears pinned back. Anything bigger than a mouse moves. You give us a whistle. Okay, and from here, I presume this is gonna be much like Lucas's Loon and Rose's Journey, where we will just advance with those people along the timeline and get the new events and see what happened along the way. So now we get to see the whole scenes in the jungle, right? Not just the partial reads that they had. So we've got Cynthia, Thomas, Stanley, and Arthur At some point in this timeline, Ludwig will make an appearance, but not yet. Cynthia is standing guard at 3 a.m., chewing on a licorice root, staring at the orange glow of the distraction happening miles away from them. Stanley and Arthur are fast asleep. Thomas taps her on the shoulder. Go rest. I'll have it from here. I'm not tired. I'll start up a small fire. Do you want a brew? That would be great. Cynthia gets the water on the boil. Thomas. So what is an MI5 agent doing in this neck of the woods anyway? I'd really like to know too. It all seemed so simple, but it all went to hell when the Japanese landed, and now I'm so far away from my loved ones. It just doesn't seem like it was worth it. I think that's how everybody feels about this bleeding war. Brew is ready. They sit in silence for a few hours, then the others wake, and they dismantle the camp, making their way down into the thick of the jungle. Yes, that's the early morning. Then we have the afternoon of December 18th. Still, the 4 of them. The day is a relentless humid wait. The group moves in a single file. The only sound, the clings of Thomas Miller's barang as he cuts through the vines and leaves to forge a path. The wild forest is a maze of vegetation and prehistoric ferns, where the light is filtered into deep dark green. Arthur is stuck behind Cynthia. He hasn't stopped talking since they cleared the plantation fence. Arthur. And my dad always said, Arthur, he said, if a sheep can get its head through a gap, the rest of it is following whether you like it or not. It's much of the same with these vines, Miss Seville, don't you think? You get one cut under your boot and the whole jungle is trying to pull you backwards. It's not like the Dales, mind. Back home, you can see a rain cloud coming from 3 miles off, although a rain cloud is never more than a few feet away in any direction. Here it's just, well, it's just like walking through a warm sponge, isn't it? Stanley, without turning, his voice booming. Tweety, close your cake hole. You're making enough noise to wake every snake from here to the coast. Sorry, Corporal, just observing like, it's a marvel really. My mom would have a fit if she saw the size of the spiders here. She thinks the ones in the barn are monstrous, but these guys... Sarge, you remember where Paulie went to put his book on it and it was too tight, so he put the boot on his face to have a good gander like this massive spider just jumped out straight on his face? He screamed like a girl. Absolutely hilarious. Suddenly, a violent crashing erupts in the canopy directly above them. Branches snap like pistol shots. Arthur lets out a high-pitched yelp, stumbling back and nearly bowling Cynthia over as he fumbles to bring his rifle to his shoulder. Arthur, Japanese, in the trees, they're coming down! Thomas, hold your fire, you daft bird brain. A large monkey swings into view, its nose twitching as it lets out a small squeal and vanishes into the higher branches. Stanley, what were you saying about Polly? Unless that monkey is a Japanese spy, I think we're safe for a minute. You nearly put a bullet in Sarge's rump. Thomas, Lord, give me strength. I'm sergeant in the Royal Marines, not a bloody nursemaid. I should be helping Fairfax protect the Empire, and instead I'm trekking through the Ulu with a milk boy who's scared of his own shadow. Yes, so Arthur literally going from laughing at other people, being scared, to being scared himself. Everyone's not entirely pleased with the, yeah, we gotta trek through the jungle situation, but I mean, it doesn't seem like there is a good place to be during a war. So you get what you get. Okay, next the evening. By dusk, they find Sanctuary's shallow limestone cave perched on a ridge. It's damp and smells of wild guano, but it offers a view of the lowlands stretching towards the distant coast. As the light fails, a series of dull booms can be heard faintly from the north, where Sandakan lays. The sky begins to pulse orange. Dark plumes of smoke, barely visible against the twilight, rise on the horizon. Arthur is staring out in a mixture of awe and fear. Sarge, those aren't fireworks, are they? Thomas, lighting a single shielded cigarette, his eyes hard. No, son. Cynthia, those are oil godowns at the harbor, and that glow, that's the city burning. Arthur, they won't take Singapore, right, Sarge? My dad said Singapore was a fortress. He said we'd be home by spring. Stanley, home by spring? Tweety, your dad's been reading too many stories. I mean, we do know that Singapore gets bombed because that's where the other group were at the time, and it was quite the chaos. Thomas, bird whistle. Get the spirit lamp going and grab some food from the back. We've a long slog tomorrow, and I'll not have you fainting because you missed your tea. Cynthia sits at the mouth of the cave, watching the distant fires of her destination. Stanley comes over and puts a blanket around her shoulders. Come, have some food. We have a long day ahead of us. If you thought the forest was bad, wait until we hit Nipa Swamps tomorrow, okay? That's gonna be the next place they go to. Thomas, Stanley Hudson, I'll take the graveyard shift. Tomorrow is your day to shine. We need you bright and alert. Arthur, what do you mean, Sarge? Corporal? What does he mean? Stanley mimics the mouth of a crocodile snapping with his arms. That's what he means. Watch your feet tomorrow. But tomorrow we're still in the jungle, at least in the morning. I guess in the afternoon is where they reach the swamp, so still the 4 of them. And yes, that's everything here. Stanley is first to emerge from his bedroll this morning. He didn't sleep very well knowing he will lead the charge. Arthur is having a cigarette, staring at the sky as black soot is raining down upon them again. He holds his tongue out. Arthur, what do you think it tastes like? Is it dangerous if I swallow too much? Will my insides turn to charcoal? Stanley, it's too early for your shenanigans. Have you not got a pot of water going yet? I couldn't maintain the watch and go find kindling. It's one or the other. We're in the jungle, you daft lad. You're surrounded by trees. If you can't find a dry stick, I'll shove an end of my rifle up your... Cynthia sits up, shaking the damp from her gabardine coat. She starts to lace her boots up. I'll go get some kindling. You men keep bickering. It's a capital way to let the Japanese know exactly where to find us. She's had enough of it. Okay, well then we get the Nipah swamps, maze of Nipah palms, and tangled mangrove roots that look like giant spiders. Still, presumably, the 4 of them. The group is waist deep in brown water. The mud beneath clings like grease. Thomas leads the way, his eyes constantly scanning the muddy banks. Watch your footing, and for the love of God, keep your muzzles out of the muck. If you plug the barrel and pull the trigger, the rifle will blow up in your face. Arthur is struggling to haul his legs out of the silt. It's like walking through treacle, Sarge. Only treacle doesn't smell like a clogged drain. Stanley, careful, Tweety. You're splashing like a beached whale. Stanley raises his hand. Freeze. Nobody move a muscle. Cynthia gets rigid, her hand instinctively finding the grip of her revolver. 10 feet to their left, a path of flattened mud curves into the water, indicating a fresh crocodile slide. The reeds are still trembling. Stanley. Big one. 12-footer at least. He's in the channel somewhere. If you feel a log bump your leg, don't scream. Just pray the Almighty like sheep farmers. Arthur. I'm praying right hard. Arthur attempts to take a wide, cautious step around the cluster of mangrove roots. He leans too far and his left leg sinks into a deep hole. There is a visceral slurp as the mud climbs his limb. Ugh, I'm stuck, Corporal, help me. Stanley starts pulling on the lad. Pull, Tweety. Heave. Arthur lunges upward with a desperate grunt. He breaks free, but his left foot emerges coated in stinking black slime. His army-issue boot remains buried 3 feet down, lost to the swamp forever. My boot, Sarge! The bloody mud's gone and eaten my boot. Thomas, we haven't been out 2 days yet, and the Imperial forces are already down to 1 shoe. Hudson, give him a hand. We can't stop to dig for it. As they navigate a bend of the narrow creek, a small sampan emerges from the bank. It is steered by a local man. A sampan is a local dugout canoe. The boat is dangerously low in the water, piled high with furniture and terrified-looking goat. 2 small children sit atop the pile, staring questioningly. Cynthia. Quebec, where do you go? Back to the city? The local man pauses his paddling, looking at the filthy British soldiers and the lady in muddy boots. He shakes his head slowly. No, ma'am, not the city. We go to the small rivers, into hiding for a while. Thomas. He got the right of it. He's taking his family inland before the Japanese can catch them. Our time is over, Cynthia. Even the locals can smell it. The man offers a respectful nod and paddles silently past them, vanishing into the maze of roots. Arthur. Does that mean the Sandakan Club won't be open? I always fancied trying that place. Stanley. I expect the new management will be serving sake by the time we get there, Tweety. Now try to keep your foot dry and keep moving. Yes, the city is definitely not going to be in a good shape by the time they get there, but now we have evening of December 19th. Still in the swamp, presumably, because no new location. As the sun begins to dip in the horizon, casting long shadows across the water, the group finally hold themselves onto firm earth. Every inch of their khaki is plastered with the thick layer of mud. Arthur is in the worst state, hobbling along. Thomas signals a halt under the roots of a giant tree. They can hear the first buzz of the 6 o'clock cicadas. Stanley drops his heavy backpack. Right, strip your socks, lad. I'll get those nasty leeches off. Arthur. I can feel them, Corporal. It feels like dozens of worms twitching inside of my leg. It's properly grisly. Stanley is starting to carefully pull the wriggling fanged worms off. Look at the size of this one. It could be a whole meal. It looks like a fat sausage. Cynthia, use the salt. Don't pull that off. It's too far in. You'll cause him a tropical ulcer by morning that will eat right to the bone. Arthur, I've lost my boot, my socks are shredded, and I'm being eaten alive by vampiric slugs. Cynthia, cheer up, Tweety. I'll fashion you a sandal out of some rattan and a bit of canvas. Cynthia uses an excuse of looking for some palm to get a moment by herself. She finds a small trickle of rainwater running down a limestone fissure. She gets a rag from her bag to scrub the swamp mud from her face and neck. The water is freezing against her skin. She unpins her hair, shaking out the silt and twigs, before braiding it back as best she can. Thomas approaches. He caps some of the rainwater in his hands to splash his face. You're being a very good sport about all this. Have you had a trek through a bush like this before? Not really, no. Spy work is not quite as adventurous as storybooks might tell you. Do tell. I've always fancied those old fast motor cars, coded telegrams, and firefights in dark alleys. There's a reason my cover is being a lady solicitor. In reality, it's mostly ledger work and analysis. It's about being the woman no one notices at the garden party. It's sitting in a stifling office in Sandakan for 6 months, cross-referencing the manifest of every Japanese ship that docks in the harbor. It's noticing that the Japanese barber on a small street is suddenly taking photographs of the constabulary barracks. You don't go looking for a smoking gun. You look for the smell of the smoke before the fire even starts. You listen for the things people don't say. Thomas. But you do carry a piece everywhere you go, Cynthia. We get trained to think that if we have to pull that trigger, Sergeant, it means I failed at my primary task. Most of my adventures involve aching eyes from reading blurred carbon copies and fearing that I've missed one tiny detail in a shipping invoice. Well, you're here now, miss, and you're walking through the Ulu with us. That's an adventure, surely. This is a failure, Thomas. The fact that we are fleeing through the trees means our spy network has failed. Our job was to see it coming. Yes, exact. She shouldn't have been caught in a plantation that's about to be invaded by multiple different forces. Yeah, the Japanese were the big threat, but there were other things happening, right? And they saw none of it coming. Thomas signals Cynthia to shush. He guides her back to the others. Stand to, everyone. The sun's touching the trees. Not a peep. The group goes motionless. Arthur clutches his rifle, his bare foot tucked under him. They sit in the dark, listening to the jungle. When they finally get to set up camp, they find a small cave in the limestone. It is easier to protect and they will be able to rest more easily, if only for one night. Looks like we're continuing in the swamps, and now we're on the morning of December 20th, and that's the last of the swamps. It begins with large clouds forming above them, then the heavens break. The first true monsoon deluge of their trek doesn't fall. It arises as a solid wall of water. The group is startled from their sleep when the cave fills up with water within seconds. They all grab their bags and boots quickly and run outside. Yes, that's also quite dangerous, just flash flooding on top of the crocodiles, the swamp, the jungle, and any potential combatants they may come upon. Arthur. I've never seen anything like it. That's not rain, it's a bloody waterfall. Stanley. Stop messing around. Grab everything you can before it all gets swept away. Cynthia. Laughing. It's a godsend is what it is. They use the force of the water to scrub the crusty mud of the Nipa swamps from their arms and chest. They hastily wrap their clothes on low-hanging branches and let the rain soak them through as they use the hilt of their parang to batter them clean. As suddenly as it began, the deluge stops, followed immediately by rising steam as the rainwater evaporates in the heat. Yeah, I guess they got their washing done because they were all caked by mud. Thomas. Right. The fun's over, Hudson. Get those ground sheets spread. We need to dry the kit before the humidity turns everything to mold. Tweety, dry your sandal. I'll not have you hobbling on a wet foot. We've a long slog ahead. The ground's going to be like a skating rink after that lot. Cynthia. The sergeant's right. We're heading to the limestone ridges of the Gomantong outskirts. They will be very slippery. We must cross them before the afternoon heat. Okay, so that's our next location. Just further up the map, massive limestone cliffs jutting out of the green canopy. So next we're afternoon of December 20, the 4 of them. After the low muddy swamps, the terrain rises sharply into limestone ridges where the air gets thinner as they climb up. The wind shifts, carrying the stench of ammonia from the droppings of millions of bats and swifts from the caves above. Stanley, keep a lookout for swift nests. They're not only edible, but a delicacy, as they preserve for weeks. Arthur, edible nests? How are they edible? What are they made of? Stanley, saliva, lad. It's solidified bird saliva. Yep, just some tasty bird vomit. But I guess when you're in a jungle and there is nothing else, then, you know, that's your choice. Arthur, that sounds foul. I wish you hadn't told me that. You asked, bird whistle. Thomas, will you two shut up and concentrate? I don't want you losing your grip and slipping. Let's just keep moving. The group is scrambling up a steep, rain-slicked ridge. Arthur is struggling mightily with his makeshift sandal being especially slippery. Arthur sees some shadow up above and he looks up. High above them, swaying in the breeze, are hundreds of wooden ladders and vine ropes. They hang from the mouths of many caves that form at the top of the Gomantong. Good heavens, what are those for? That's where the collectors live, lad. The swiftlet nests are up there. Like I said, they're a delicacy. But how did they get up there? They climb, bird whistle, they climb. Stanley, blimey! You wouldn't catch me up there for all the king's gold. Those collectors must have hollow bones. Cynthia, it seems they're all bolted a while ago from the state of things, Stanley. So they continue on? They don't. Did something happen to one of them, or did we add more people? Well, we can check it with the pearl and with the knife. It's a hopeless standoff. The pirates have the high ground and the numbers. Okay, so yes. Using the pearl, I can see that Ludwig is now here. So it's gonna be the 4 of them and Ludwig. They reach a small plateau, a natural shelf on the cliffside. The group is winded. Thomas signals for a brief rest, but before he can even see himself, he notices something jump from the shadows. A dozen figures step out from behind a screen of giant ferns. They are Suluk marauders, pirates with their chests etched with tribal ink, brandishing swords and rifles. Stanley scrambles to his feet, snapping his rifle up to his shoulder. Stanley, ambush, form a square. Arthur whimpers as he fumbles with his bolt. Sarge, they're everywhere! It is a hopeless standoff. The pirates have the high ground and the numbers. Cynthia and the British soldiers are backed against the sheer limestone wall. One pirate, a man with a vicious scar across his throat, steps forward, his blade leveled at Thomas Miller's chest. Just as he prepares to swing, there's a sharp whistle from the rocks above. Ludwig Harrow emerges from the shadows of a fissure, a heavy pistol tucked into a crimson sash. His eyes fall upon the group, eventually settling on Cynthia. A slow grin spreads across his face. Well, I'll be son of a sea cook, the lady solicitor. I thought you have been gutted by the Japanese by now. Cynthia steps forward, her hand remaining on her revolver, her voice steady as ice. You're a long way from the plantation, Harrow. The world is upending itself, my dear. A man must find high ground when the enemy comes from the shores. And you? Trekking through the Ulu with one-legged boy and a couple of old hands? And tell me, what of Bone and the rest of the poor devils? Did they salvage anything from the chaos? Bone is dead. The plantation is charred ruin and everyone is evacuating. Ludwig looks genuinely saddened. He looks out towards the horizon where the smoke still lingers, then back at Cynthia. He offers a slow, respectful nod. Dead, is he? A shame. I like the old devil. He had pluck. Ludwig signals his men to step back. They vanish back into the greenery as quickly as they appeared. Go on then, strike for the city. But the Japanese hold the back road to Sandakan. You'll have to take the Sepulchre crossing tracks if you want to make it. Why the hell, Ludwig? Consider it a professional courtesy. I'd rather see you drown in the Atlantic than be executed by those little men from the north. Now, get a move on before I change my mind. Arthur. Sarge, did a pirate just let us go? Thomas. Shut it, Private Birdwhistle. Just keep moving before the Almighty realizes he made a mistake. The group scrambles away, their boots slipping on the wet limestone. Arthur glances back one last time, half expecting a volley of gunfire. That night, the group is doubly vigilant. Every snap of twig, every rustle of a leaf sends a jolt of adrenaline through them. They huddle close to the fire, the flames doing little to ward off the oppressive darkness of the jungle. So we've unlocked the Sepulchre crossing, but we're not yet done with the Gomatong outskirts, so we'll continue here with just the 4. Ludwig's now been removed from potential people, so I guess that was his only appearance. The following morning, the group continues their trek through the jungle. The terrain is still treacherous, but the worst of the limestone ridges are behind them. They are making good time, but the humid heat is taking its toll. Arthur, how much further to Sepulchre Crossing, Sergeant Miller? Thomas, not far now, Private. Just over this next ridge and we should be able to see the coast. As they crest the ridge, they are met with breathtaking sight. Below them, the jungles stretch out as far as the eye can see. A sea of green broken only by the winding ribbon of the river. They make their way down the ridge. As they reach the bottom, they come across a small clearing where a group of locals are gathered around a fire. Stanley, look at that, a proper feat. Thomas, let's not jump the gun. It's their feast. We can be polite and stop for a spot of lunch if they have us. The locals are a group of Dasun hunters. The Dasun people are the largest indigenous group in the North Borneo. They're farmers and fierce hunters. They look up as the group approaches. They are wary at first, but when they see that the group is not Japanese soldiers, they relax slightly. Cynthia. Good day to you. We're British soldiers. We're heading to Sandakan. The locals nod, understanding the word Sandakan. They gesture for a group to join them around the fire. They seem friendly enough. Thomas, aye, but keep your guard. The group joins the locals around the fire, and they are offered food and water. Arthur tucks in with gusto. This is the best food I've had in weeks. I'll tell you, Miss Cynthia. If I ever get back to Yorkshire, I'm telling my dad to stop keeping sheep and start keeping whatever the chaps are catching. This is properly grand. Thomas sits slightly apart, watching the dozen hunters and the rest of his party enjoy the food. He accepts a bamboo tube of water, nodding his thanks to the elder. You know, I spent the last 48 hours calling you a shambles. I've called you pups, milkboys, and nuisances. Stanley. Well, you weren't wrong about the nuisance bit where Tweety is concerned, Sarge. Thomas, I've seen a lot of men hit the Ulu for the first time, men with years of drill behind them, and I've seen them weep and break in the harshness of it all. But I will say this for you lot, you've got guts, more than most in the circumstances. Cynthia, I'll drink to that. They all take a long drink from their bamboo tube, the liquid sloshing over the rim and down their chin. Well, we're off to Sepilok Crossing next. Getting close to Sandakan now. I mean, you know, not like it's next door. There's still a bunch to go, but closer than they were. Giant dipterocap trees block out the sun, making the forest floor a permanent twilight. Still the four of them, I assume eventually they meet this John Fairfax, probably in Sandakan. After they recuperated from that lunch, they cross into the Epilogue Reserve, where the giant dipterocap trees soar 200 feet into the air, their interlocking crowns weaving a roof of so dense that the sun barely makes it through. The forest floor is a world of permanent twilight, surprisingly clear of vines but full of moss, fungi, and the occasional giant millipede. The group moves through the giant trunks, feeling like ants. Even Arthur has been silenced by the majesty of the place as they walk on the thick carpet of decaying leaves. Arthur, I didn't think trees could grow this big. Cynthia, they called dipterocarps. They're the giants of the jungle. Stanley, the way the light shines through the branches. Looks like a cathedral. As they walk, they come across a clearing where a large orangutan is sat perched on a branch. It watches them with soulful eyes, slowly peeling a wild fruit. Look, Sarge, Miss Cynthia. It's a man. There's a man in a fur coat up there. Thomas. That's no man, Tweety. There's a true masters of Borneo. He's likely wondering what a sorry side like us is doing trampling through his neck of the woods. Arthur. He's got a face just like my great-uncle George. He has a big bushy ginger beard. Look at him. He's winking at me. The group stops towards the orangutan. Arthur makes a clicking sound with his tongue. The orangutan tilts its head, drops the fruit peel and lets out a booming call that echoes through the trees. The group laughs. After a few minutes, the orangutan swings away, leaving the group in silence once more. Thomas, we should keep moving. We're losing a crack like a stub of dead branch shatters the moment. Thomas doesn't scream. He simply jerks backwards. Blood starts seeping through his khaki tunic. He looks at Cynthia with a look of profound bewilderment before he collapses into the moss. Arthur looks in horror. Cynthia drops into the dirt. Arthur. Sarge? Sarge? Cynthia. Arthur, down! Get down, you fool! Stanley scrambles behind a tree trunk, his face pale. What was that? A sniper? From the shadows of massive trunks, shots crack through the air, hitting the trees around him. Snipers! It's the Japanese! Arthur peeking over a log. They're everywhere! Cynthia draws her pistol. Get behind me. The staccato chatter of a Japanese machine gun erupts from behind the leaves, shredding the trees all around them. Stanley Hudson is propped against a massive root. He shoots in the direction of the muzzle flashes. Japanese in the canopy! 10 o'clock! They're in the bali trees! Arthur is lying there frozen in terror. He's staring at Thomas' lifeless eyes. Cynthia. Look at me, Private. The sergeant's gone. If you want to see Yorkshire again, you pick up that rifle and you fire. Do you hear me? Fire! Cynthia lunges back into the killing zone as Stanley and Arthur provide covering fire. The Japanese bullets kicking up dirt around her heels. She seizes Thomas's bag containing the dispatches for the governor and drags it back into cover. From the sergeant's belt, she snatches a grenade. She tears the pin out with her teeth. Stanley, cover the flank! Cynthia stands, arches her back, and hurls the grenade into a thick cluster of ferns where the muzzle flashes are brightest. A loud explosion shakes the forest floor, and the machine gun stops for a minute. Now, bolt! Make for the back ridge. Don't look back. The 3 survivors flee through the shadows of the Sepilok, leaving Thomas Miller's body behind. Well, poor Thomas. So on this one we do lose people along the way, because on Lund and Lucas's and Rose's journey, fortunately for them, they all made it through. But here we've got losses. So we continue in the crossing, but now it's Cynthia, Stanley, and Arthur. They ran until the light faded completely, leaving the Japanese patrol squarely behind them. They collapse under one of the trees, their lungs burning, their uniforms soaked with sweat. Cynthia slumps against the damp wood, her breath coming in ragged, painful hitches. She clutches Miller's back close to her chest. Stanley throws his rifle down in anger. Arthur is crying, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. He's gone. He's bloody gone. We left him. Cynthia, we left him so that we could live, Arthur. Pull yourself together. He wouldn't want you to be like this. He knew the risks. Arthur flinches but doesn't look up. Stanley sinks to his knees, his head in his hands. It's my fault. I should have done something. Cynthia, there was nothing to be done, Stanley. The Japanese had us pinned. We didn't even see them. They were ghosts. We're alive. That's all that matters. When I had the malaria in 39, he sat up 3 nights pouring quinine into my throat. He was a good man. He was a good man and we left him. We just bloody left him there to rot. He deserved a proper burial. Cynthia opened Miller's bag. Inside, nested among damp maps and a half-eaten tin of biscuits, is the dispatches for the governor. He wouldn't have wanted a burial, Stanley. He would want us to get the dispatches delivered to the governor. Stanley looks up, his eye red-rimmed. Arthur stops crying, his attention caught. Arthur wipes his eyes with the back of his hand. So, we should continue our mission? For the Sarge? Cynthia. We should. Listen to me, both of you. The service doesn't give us the luxury of mourning today, but I swear to you, we'll make the sergeant's death mean something. We'll carry this bag to its destination. Stanley stands up, his resolve returning. Then let's get on with it. The sooner we get there, the sooner we can get back to civilization. Arthur. Right. Civilization. And a pint. Cynthia manages a weak smile. She tucks the dispatches back into the bag. Come on, you two. We've got a long way to go. Next stop, Batao Sapi. And that's our next location. Batu Sapi. 3-legged sandstone rock formation that looks like a cow standing in the sea. They walked all night in silence. They couldn't bring themselves to make camp and just wanted to make good time to reach civilization as soon as possible. The darkness of the primary forest is replaced by the brutal glare of the equatorial sun reflecting off the Sulu Sea. They stand upon a low sandstone bluff. Below them sits Batu Sapi. In peacetime, it's a popular tourist site, but in wartime, it's a desolate place. Arthur. We're out then. We're really out the trees. Stanley. Aye, that's the cow. That means we're close now. 5 miles from the Jubilee Tower. Cynthia moves to the very edge of the bluff, shielding her eyes against the shimmering heat haze of the bay. In the distance, the whitewashed buildings of Sandakan are visible. Oily black smoke spirals into the sky from the waterfront. The sawmills and the oil godowns are all ablaze. Stanley. Good God, they've put the whole Bali town to the torch. Cynthia. That's the work of the British, not the Japanese. They're destroying everything on the way out. We need to hurry or there will be no one left. They will have all evacuated. Look there, Hudson, by the harbor, behind the headland. They can see an Imperial Japanese destroyer sitting at the mouth of the bay, waiting for any British vessel to attempt to break for open sea. A Fubuki class, by the look of her. She's corking the bottle. No one is sailing out of Sandakan. Arthur. So what do we do now? Cynthia. We keep moving. We find a way to get to Sandakan. We deliver these dispatches. We'll enter the city from the cliffs. So it looks like we're to Sandakan now, but there are still a few points to go. Yeah, Sandakan is into the fire. But so when we left the plantation, it said out of the frying pan. We have afternoon, December 22nd. They make it to Sandakan. They skirt the low-lying Chinese town. Chinese town was a bustling district of shophouses and markets where the local Chinese community conducted their business. Where the rattle of gunfire and the screams of panicked population drift up from the waterfront. They make their way to the wireless station. The tall steel telegraph masts of the wireless station have been felled like timber, their cables lying in the dirt. Radio communication to and from outside world now impossible. They can see the secretariat buildings down below as well as the docks, a jumble of scuttled ships and burning launches. Arthur. Everyone's running, Corporal. Are we too late? Has the governor bolted? Cynthia. He won't have bolted, Bird Whistle. A British governor doesn't leave his post. He gets dragged from it. The government house on the double. They reach the gates of Government House. Inside, everyone is running around frantically. Clerks are dealing with masses of locals and refugees trying to find a way out. The group is ignored as they enter and left to their own devices. They find the governor in his study, a stiff drink in his hand. Cynthia salutes him as they enter. Governor, I carry dispatches from Commander Fairfax. Fairfax? Is he still alive? We heard the Japanese had reached the Sulu coast yesterday. The Navy held them for a time, sir. The dispatches contain the Navy's final coordinates for the evacuation. Is there a vessel available for these men? A vessel? Look out the window, my dear. The Japanese have the harbor by the throat. No merchantman is clearing that harbor today or any day soon. We are merely waiting for the knock at the door now. Then it's time to finish this. Hudson, Bird Whistle, follow me. I have one last mission to conduct, and you may as well accompany me. Next, it's evening of December 22nd. They're all supposed to go together, but they're not, so we can just sense with items. Okay, so it's because they meet with John Fairfax. So it's gonna be Cynthia, Stanley, Arthur, and John. Cynthia leads the 2 bewildered soldiers away from the government district and up the residential hills to the unassuming bungalow. The moment the first door is bolted, her fiancé John emerges from the shadows. John Fairfax sees the 2 soldiers and pauses for a second before opening his arms to greet Cynthia. My beloved, finally! You can drop the act, John. We're at war and past the subterfuge. This is Stanley and Arthur. They're with me. Last, this is John Fairfax, my handler. Commander Fairfax's brother. Okay, so that's now explained. So they're not really together. That's just their cover for like, why are they there together? So when the commander was like, oh yeah, you're intended and whatever, he was like, he knew all of this and he was just like, I have no time for your spy ways. And I initially said that John was a son, but I guess brother may be more sense. John. Fine, report, agent, and be quick. The Japanese are at the Jubilee Tower. The Sandakan Jubilee Clock Tower was a historic landmark located in Sandakan. It survived the war, but was demolished soon after when the town was rebuilt. I may have failed in my primary mission, but seeing what's happening on our front door, I doubt it matters. On the other hand, I've got something much better in these circumstances. Cynthia opens her bag and slides over the mist report. The formulae for the green mist, everything the service requires to manufacture it. An SIS agent, Lucas Sterling, is on his way back to the Allies with the countermeasures, but this is the sword to match his shield. Capital work, Agent Seville. This will make the board of directors sit up and take notice. As John reads through the documents, Stanley takes a look around and finds a hidden room with wireless equipment. I say, who are you people truly? We're the ghost in the machine, Stanley. We're your only ticket out of this graveyard, John. The harbor is blocked, but the seaplane base on the western inlet is still holding. We have a Catalina, a military flying boat, prepping for a dawn run to Colombo. Arthur. A flying boat? We're going to fly to London? John. Not quite London, lad. I will get you to sailing in 48 hours. It's a tight squeeze, and loud as anything, but it beats hanging around here waiting to die. Yes, so that's how she then meets them at Colombo. They take this boat. And then the final one. Morning of December 23rd. Okay, it's Cynthia, Stanley, and Arthur without John. The Catalina sits low in the water of a hidden cove. Cynthia, Stanley, and Arthur, in their new clean uniforms, scramble through the waist-high hatch. The plane begins its takeoff run. Cynthia. Keep your chins up, boys. Next stop, the Gale Force Hotel. Arthur looks down at the burning city as the plane lifts off. Look at that, Stanley. We're flying. We're really flying. Away from it all. Stanley. Good riddance to the Ulu. I won't miss her, Arthur. The flying boat banks west, climbing into the clouds. The long flight towards the Indian Ocean has begun. I have found all concerning Cynthia now. I'll write it all up in a side report. It still might be of interest to someone. Yes, and that's the final thing. Report on Cynthia's faith. Okay, so it's gonna be in our inventory, and that will take us to the end. Mr. Goodwill, I know what happened to Cynthia. She escaped Sandakan with the mist report and made it to Ceylon. I should try to reach out to her and get her side of the story at some point, but that's not for today. For now, I can close that chapter. Delphine. Yes, and we can complete that. And that's the third and final part of the Red Pearls of Borneo. So yeah, that was quite a lot. It was a lot bigger than I expected it to be, because obviously I played the first part and I didn't really realize that there was that much more, right? I was like, oh yeah, I had some unfilled slots, but you know, we got the story. But then yes, it turns out there was the whole previous story with Lucas and Loon and Rose going through all of the hardships they went to get to London. And then yes, we get to see at least part of Cynthia's story, right? Because obviously we don't get to see what happens after she left Borneo, and we have the little glimpse of when she meets the others in Colombo, but again, we don't know anything before that, after that. I think, yes, Green Mist over Portland, the next game, it obviously includes Delphine, but I think it also involves Cynthia. So those two will be working together in some way to uncover new mysteries. February 1964. There's a knock at the front door. Who could that be? I'm coming. Yes, Cynthia. Hello, Delphine. Agent Seville? What brings you here? I'm in danger, and I don't know who to trust anymore. I need your help. What's wrong? What's going on? One of our best agents and a very dear friend of mine has disappeared. The last time I spoke to him, he said he was onto something big, but that he was being followed. I'm worried sick, and I fear the worst, and that someone from the inside is responsible. I'm sorry to hear that. What was his name? His name Arthur. Arthur Birdwhistle. Okay, so Arthur grew up, and I guess Cynthia maybe took him under her wing, and he was able to become an agent, but now he's gone. Now he's disappeared. Yes, the story continues in Green Mist over Portland. Wishlist now. Yes, if you enjoyed this format, if you enjoyed the way this game was put together, definitely wishlist that, and await the release. I think it's scheduled for this year, for like later this year, and then we can see what else happens. Now, having played all of this, I think like the narrative of the game is really interesting. It does feel like the dev put in a lot of work into the writing, into the narrative, right? That's the core of the game, and it does feel like they've put in a lot of research into the time period, into the various regions that are involved here. I can't confirm the accuracy of it because I don't myself know it all that well, but it felt like the work was there, right? It felt like they put the work in. The different parts played quite differently, right? I think the first part was the most balanced in terms of reading something and then drawing conclusion from it about where to go next, right? Where did those people go? Where should I try next with locations and people? Like that had the core of the gameplay, because obviously that was the first part, so presumably that was the initial idea of how this should be played. Then the first journey, that basically had none of that, right? That just ended up being press on next location with all the same people every time. In terms of story, it was an interesting way to close it out, but instead of, in terms of gameplay, there wasn't really much of it. It was mostly reading. I only did one ending in that second ending, right? I chose to say that the brother was dead and it was all just like a ghost beyond the grave. I did find out that after you can go back and click on the second ending, but honestly, that one just says that Lucas lied and the brother's alive, and actually Lucas was worried because the brother was rich and he thought they would just leave him. And the result of that is that Loon and Rose get angry and do leave to go be with the brother. And honestly, it just seemed like a much poorer end. Like, as much as a request from the ghost seems like a, stretch, even though I guess Delphine is a medium, so everything is possible, right? Mediums are real in this universe. The whole, Lucas lied and the whole thing breaks up just seemed like an even worse choice. So I stand by the way I finished that one. And then this last part kind of had a bit of both, right? It had a return to the investigation part back at the plantation, except it was still sort of weird because it was now kind of bending the mechanics of like, sometimes you could open a scene even though you didn't pick all of the people that were in it. Then other times you were doing the picking, but the amount of information you were getting was a lot more limited. And actually, the best strategy turned out to be just go through everything with the items, and then that gave you the outline of what you needed to focus on. So in terms of balancing, that seemed like it had a lot less like thought put into making it flow nicely than like the first part of the game. And then the second part of this one was the same as the first journey, which is like we just click through locations and read the rest of the story. And honestly, I was less invested in that part. Like, at least with Lucas and Loon and Rose, I was like, okay, I'm invested in what happens to them, how their relationship develops, if they survive, if they make it home. This part, it was just some soldiers they're introduced alongside Cynthia. And I was like, I'm not sure I care about those characters as much. Even when one of them dies, it's like, yeah, okay, it's the war, it happens. But it looks like Arthur, at least, that was introduction of his character, and he will at least be mentioned in the new game. Maybe they will be able to save him as well. But yes, Delphine and Cynthia will be working together in the Green Mist of Portland. So if you enjoy this one, wishlist that one, and it will probably also end up on this channel in the future when the full game is out. So thank you so much for watching. And as always, thank you to channel members for supporting the channel. And I will see you soon on another adventure.